שוב מכה בכם. זה יום הדין, זה יום הדין, אללה לא עוזר לכם, צהל שוב מכה בכם. יום אחד קיבלתם פור, באתם בהמוניכם, נא הביטו לאחור, אללה לא עוזר לכם. זה יום הדין, זה יום הדין, אללה לא עוזר לכם, צהל שוב מכה בכם. זה יום הדין, זה יום הדין, אללה לא עוזר לכם, צהל שוב מכה בכם. כשעסקנו בתפילה, חציתם את התעלה, כשעליתם שוב בהר, לא חשבתם על מחר. זה יום הדין, זה יום הדין, אללה לא עוזר לכם, צהל שוב מכה בכם. זה יום הדין, זה יום הדין, אללה לא עוזר לכם, צהל שוב מכה בכם. אין מנוס ואין מפלט, אין לכם פשוט ברירה, אין תקווה ואין מקלט, אין כבר דרך חזרה. זה יום הדין, זה יום הדין, אללה לא עוזר לכם, צהל שוב מכה בכם. זה יום הדין, זה יום הדין, אללה לא עוזר לכם, צהל שוב מכה בכם. ברמה ובמדבר, באמצע יום הכיפורים, באתם בתרועת שופר, אך יצאתם בשברים. זה יום הדין, זה יום הדין, אללה לא עוזר לכם, צהל שוב מכה בכם. זה יום הדין, זה יום הדין, אללה לא עוזר לכם, צהל שוב מכה בכם. זה יום הדין, זה יום הדין, אללה לא עוזר לכם, צהל שוב מכה בכם.
Were you surprised to see Syrian tanks so close to your unit?
Well, no, that was a surprise because they surprised us because we were not ready for the fight, but because it was a holiday for us. Otherwise, we wouldn't make a surprise like they did today.
Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страны.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ. Тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
Байрактар. Байрактар.
Байрактар.
Yes.
The Leaf Street Army sends its regards.
Русский военный корабль. Предлагаю сложить оружие и сдаться. Русский военный корабль, иди нахуй.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 644 of the news. And it's good to see you all once again. And Ukraine is destroying some bases. What do you know?
And we have some interesting news over the past 24 hours, because a deep strike has occurred inside of Russia, destroying one of the major Shahed storage facilities that have been used to house the Shaheds before they were used against Ukraine. And not only that, we're also hearing some other wild things as well. Kadyrov's 16-year-old son might have been made the commander of an entire brigade today, and we also got to see some other interesting deep strikes that the Ukrainians have conducted on Russian lines. And I gotta tell you, damn, that's deep. And speaking of deep, we got to go all the way into Russia. We don't know exactly where the Shahed storage facility was, but we were told that it was at least more than 150 miles away from the Ukrainian border, and we got one picture here that this facility that housed Shaheds was on fire and exploding. It appears that although it's nighttime and we can't really see the smoke plume too well, the fire illuminating the cloud, it does appear to be some kind of a grayish, maybe even whitish colored smoke, indicating that a large amount of ammunition is burning and exploding. Considering that Shahed 136s have a built-in high explosive charge, this is probably a clear indicator that this is certainly some kind of a Shahed that is blowing up inside of this warehouse, or any other kinds of explosives as well. Regardless, it's big news, and we also got to hear that the rumor has it that this was a Ukrainian strike that was conducted by a drone. We haven't been able to get any corroborating information at the moment, such as pictures or videos or security camera footage showing that it was a Ukrainian drone, but that is what we're being told at the moment, and so that's what we're putting out there, but with a disclaimer, so that way, just in case if it is wrong, we will be able to go back and correct it, and having everyone already be on the same page, that information may or may not be true at the moment. We're just going off of what we've heard. But moving on from this wonderful news, and to the larger implication that it may have, the destruction of possibly dozens, most likely hundreds of Shaheds may mean that Russian Shahed attacks significantly decrease over the next few weeks, at least in volume or size of the singular attacks, because of a lack of these Shaheds. They may also have to draw from other supply depots around Russia or further inside of Russia to bring them into the operational theater to be used, which could also add more additional time and give the Ukrainians a little bit of breathing room to protect their critical infrastructure, or at least rearrange their air defenses so that way when these Shahed attacks begin to pick up in size again, they will be entirely ready for anything that may come their way. And that's pretty good, and of course, a solid move. But moving on from that really quickly, I have to bring y'all down to Chechnya. We all know Chechnya, the country, well, the semi-autonomous country that exists and doesn't exist. It is the Schrodinger's country. Does everyone say that Chechnya is an independent country that is an ally of Russia today, or do they say that it is an oblast of Russia tomorrow? Nobody knows, but one thing that we do know is that Grozny was rebuilt from the ground up after the first Chechen War, and a little bit after the second Chechen War, and this allowed for some pretty elaborate groundworks to happen in the middle of the city. We can see right here the presidential palace of the president of the Republic of Chechnya, which is a semi-autonomous republic of the Russian Federation, but technically it's more so of an oblast, as everything inside of the Russian Federation, regardless of its classification, almost falls under the direct control of the central government, with puppet leaders set up in place, much like Ramzan Kadyrov is. But this is where he is from, right here. This is probably the building he is in right now, on these palatial grounds that surround the place, and this big moat that they actually built right off the Reka Sunza River that allows them to further protect Ramzan Kadyrov from all of the Chechens who probably want him dead. But also, another cool fact, did y'all know that Grozny has a mall? Like, it's a big one. Like, I'm not even kidding. Take a look at this. And let me see if I can get it up. Man, they got that freaking crispy.
They also have Crop House and Reserved and Carry. Very interesting.
And they also have RIBGOS. So they have Ribgosh.
Ribgosh. I wonder what that could be. Is that food, I'm assuming?
I'm guessing so, man. When you sit there, when you're driving through Europe and you go, oh man, I want some KFC, but your Russian dad says, no, we have KFC at home, you get crispy. And I gotta tell you this, Matthew, Russians love crispy. I've seen a lot of Russians love crispy so much they're getting crispy in Ukraine right now from incendiaries. But anyways, moving inside of this mall, it's actually pretty nice, but once again, this is kind of one of those facade things that the Russians have done, because the rest of Grozny does not look like this. This is a very rare exception, and really because it's in the central part of Grozny, which allows it to be nice and well built up. But we're not here to talk about the city. We're here to talk about Ramzan Kadyrov and his family that lives inside of this presidential palace and kind of the palatial grounds surrounding it. It appears that information has possibly been found out today that his 16-year-old son, right there, is going to be given command of an entire division. Not a brigade, I actually was mistaken. It's an entire division, which consists of, I think, about 3 or 4 brigades. This is insane. That's about 20,000 or so soldiers that are going to be under this kid's direct command, if this is true.
You know that's got to make those soldiers feel like crap that are actually under that kid, because they probably actually fought, and this kid's probably done absolutely nothing, and now he's in charge.
Dude, you know this kid hasn't done squat, and oh my lord, dude, I don't even know what they're thinking at this point. But then again, I mean, in all honesty, is this really going to matter? It probably won't, because we know that the Kadyrovite Chechens aren't even on the front lines in large numbers anymore. Most of their unit is either inside of Chechnya right now, or the alternative is that they are in Ukraine, but they're almost like a police force in the back, in the rear lines, where they end up doing very questionable things to normal Russian soldiers that are fighting on the front lines. So chances are that this doesn't probably impact anything at all, but it's still a joke to have a 16-year-old kid possibly take command of an entire division. Now, I will say this did come out on Telegram, and we weren't able to confirm which Telegram it is, so this may be completely erroneous, or this may be entirely true, and considering that we did see that Ramzan Kadyrov was promoting his son in some kind of a range video about a week ago, it's entirely possible that this may actually be a reality, that a 16-year-old kid has been given command of an entire division. Let's see. Some people are like, but man, like in ancient times, like 1200 AD, a 16-year-old would have been like a badass. Well, maybe, but this isn't the 1200s.
Not this guy.
Yeah, not this guy, and this isn't the 1200s anymore. This is 2023. Things have gotten a lot more complicated as far as fighting a war goes since the 1200s, and I don't think this kid has any idea what he's doing. Shooting a Glock is one thing. Managing an entire division is almost like managing a corporation. It is a huge undertaking and a massive ordeal, especially just on the logistical side of things, making sure that people are fed, clothed, and provided for and paid. That is very tough, much less actually trying to operate one on a battlefield. That would be a massive undertaking for a 16-year-old kid. I mean, that is insane.
I'm sure the best thing this kid's seen is probably a really fine, violent TikTok reel. That's probably the best thing he's ever done.
Dude, you know this boy was sitting there on TikTok and he was doing like the little skibbity toilet dances or whatever, and now he's going to be commanding an entire division. Dude, this is terrible.
What could go wrong?
So many things could go wrong with this kid in charge of a division, and I'm just waiting for it. I want to see what happens. So, hey, huge shout out to the Chechens. They're out there experimenting, unlike other countries that don't have the balls. I guess this is what Russia is good for, after all. Putting 16-year-old kids in charge of 20,000 soldiers and seeing what happens. And I guess we're going to all find out here very soon. But moving on from Chechnya and on towards Russian-occupied Crimea, there's also been some very interesting things that happened here as well. And I gotta take out of this one because this one is just a little bit of a funny. And I thought it was great, so I'm gonna show it to y'all. This man got lost in that hurricane sauce, the best way to describe it. We can see him here at the coastal defenses of Sevastopol, and we can see the massive concrete hedgehogs that they have set up to stop landing ships, which is insane to see. And the waves are crashing against him. And this guy here, who is, I believe, a border guard, which is a little odd, but he goes up to the concrete wall where these hedgehogs are, and he decides to try and film the massive torrent that the storm is creating. And he gets swept up into it. So we can see him trying to film the video, and we can see it coming. There's a giant wave that's about to crash over that wall. And he's like, oh, bled! Oh, bled!
Oh.
Oh, my lord.
He got it good, too. He almost got swept away. That was the worst action he's ever seen.
Dude, this guy sat there, he said, hey, Evan, I'm going to go film the giant waves. And then they said, no, don't do it. And then he hit his head on the concrete. They said, are you okay? And he went, they're like, oh, no. Watch this again. This guy got smacked. Like, his feet were swept out so hard from under him, he got a concussion from that. Look at this. Thunk. Ah! Oh, man, I love to see Russian stupidity just in its rawest form. And that is raw right there. I mean, this is so raw that Gordon Ramsay's about to show up and start screaming at this guy. This guy not only hit his head on the concrete at full speed, he's also drowning now in the wave. So it's just a lose-lose all around for this guy. And his phone's probably ruined too, so he didn't even get the video out of it. But moving on from that little bit of news near Sevastopol, we're now going to be moving up near Saki, because it looks like rather than the Russians sucking on the front lines, it also appears that the Air Force is coming up with a new term called sacking. And we can see that a Russian airbase in Saki was once again hit and practically knocked out. Well, knocked out maybe a bit of a stretch, but turned into a small star, that is something we can see. Russian experiment number 1,917,000. The shooting star. Man, this guy's angry. Like, man, this guy sounds like he's a little hangry back there. Look at him. Man, he's getting a little angry.
Why does he sound like a hobbit?
You know, I have a feeling that that is hotter than at least 100 degrees. But I don't really know for sure. It's still nice to just watch the Saki airfield burn to the ground. Sadly, of course, information is a little tough to come by. We don't have any exact details at the moment about the Saki airfield and what happened there. Here it is. It's actually in Novofedorivka, but Saki is the larger town. So Novofedorivka Air Base is just thrown into being the Saki airfield. That's what it's called. But we don't know what was hit at this airfield and what led to the explosion. You can actually see here that when this satellite picture was taken during, I believe it was like June of 2023, they actually had some Su-35s, some Su-24s, some MiGs, MiG-29s or MiG-35s, can't really tell which one. And then they also had some more Su-35s, some more Su-24s. I mean, they were really, cannibalized Su-24, and they were really stocking this place up huge, especially compared to what it was last year. Saki got hit last year, and the Russian Air Force actually evacuated from the airfield, but at some point this year, we don't know when, they returned to the airfield and began to use it again. But I have a feeling that after this strike, which ended up creating a small star, I have a feeling that they're probably not going to be hanging out at this airfield again, and they're going to be leaving. But we're now moving on from that little bit of news in occupied Crimea, and we're now going to be moving on out of the area of Crimea, and specifically towards the area that appears to have the most potential in progress for the Ukrainians to be able to make it into Crimea and take the place, and that is the Kherson front. Kherson is one of the fronts that is one of the juiciest and the most interesting to watch, because it's a kind of warfare that hasn't existed in Ukraine ever before. We have seen fighting near rivers, fighting near the Dnipro reservoirs. We've seen stuff like that, but we've never seen fighting occurring inside of the marsh. That is something that has never existed for us in this war up until about a few months ago. And now it's really starting to pick up. And so as far as this front goes, it is a very unique one, just due to the challenges that it poses to the Ukrainian attackers, and also the inevitable challenges that are also faced by Russian defenders, as the marsh provides an exemplary amount of cover for Ukrainian infantry that are in the area, but at the same time, it's a bit of a drawback. Nevertheless, we do have 3 clips that came from this area today, starting off with our first one, showing a Crab SPG providing some fire support at a very high angle. I mean, and when I say high angle, I mean this thing is almost shooting vertically. And when you see right here, the breach is almost facing directly towards the floor of the SPG here. We now see it loading. And we now see them loading in the powder charge. Once again, almost vertically. And firing. Now, this is a neat video, of course. Everyone, is probably going to be like, we've seen this a million times. It's a crab, it's firing it from inside. It's an internal view. What is so special about this? It's very interesting to notice how high of a fire angle this Crab SPG is firing at. Interestingly enough, there is a point where if you start to angle up the artillery piece's gun high enough, like say 70, 80, and 90 degrees, you kind of get to the point, and 90 degrees is near impossible in most SPGs, by the way. It usually is capped off somewhere in the 70s to 80s, which is the max elevation. But once you get to that kind of elevation, the range that this thing is firing at is practically right in front of the artillery piece, maybe about 3 miles out, 2 miles out at best. That's what we're probably looking at right now as a range. And this is giving us a really good idea that this is providing incredibly close fire support to Ukrainian forces on the other side of the Dnipro River. So far, the Ukrainians have not been able to create a way for heavier systems like that Crab SPG to be able to cross the Dnipro River. And so all of Ukraine's heavy support vehicles, like the Crab, are stuck on the other side, on the actual Kherson side of the river. This means that if the Ukrainians want fire support, while those crabs can literally be on the shoreline of the river, they are going to have to provide a very steep arc of fire so that way that round lands right onto the southern side of Krinky, or let me make sure I'm getting this correct. It's Kazachi Lakhri, I believe, which is the one a little bit further west of, and let me make sure, it's a little bit further west of Krinky, and it is. That's probably where we're seeing this crab providing fire support. It may even be over on the highway, the E58 highway, pulling over alongside the road, firing off some shots, and then moving on its way. This is a good sign that the Ukrainians are making progress on the other side of the river. This could be providing fire support in a defensive as the Russians are trying to uproot and force the Ukrainians off of that side of the Dnipro River. It may also equally be supporting fire for Ukrainian forces that are advancing through Krinky and into the forest near the Aleski Sands. Either way, it is a very interesting sign, and it is showing that due to the river, this SPG is firing at a high arc, and it is confirmed proof that the Ukrainians still are on the other side of that river and hopefully doing some good work that will be pushing forward their frontline objectives. But moving on from that into the area of Radinsk, a town a little bit further behind the lines in this area, and also quite an interesting one because it is one of the lowest density villages I've seen in this area. It's the best way to describe it is just like village houses, and that's it. I'll try and get y'all a picture of it here if I can. Let's see if anyone took a picture. It's right on the Aleski Sands. But anyone got a picture? It's really just houses like these right here. This would be your prototypical house in a place like Radinsk, and it's really none of them. If you look at satellite pictures, it is probably the most sparse town ever seen. It's just allotments for the village houses, and that's it. That's what is considered to be the city, or the village more so. And it does appear that some very smart Russians were hanging out at Radinsk today, and it ended up filming a video of themselves just hanging out and showing us how smart the normal Russian soldier is in the Kherson area. And it gives me hope that the Russians will lose. Here we just got out of the front line. Relax a little. Relaxing in terms of eating the food that we brought. Look at those grandpas. This is a Kazakh. That is my man. Look at this grandpa. He came to war. Look what combat
Are they proud of this though?
Yeah, apparently they're like, look at this, what are all the geezers? It's like, huh?
Jeez, that's not something to be proud of.
Man, I would agree too. It's not something to be proud of, but they're proud of it. I mean, give it to them. We will buy beer. Victory will be ours. Here is our grandpa. Look, it's the fourth one. Show the young one too, bro. Here is our biggest one. He doesn't even fit into the frame. He's wide format. He's a fat ass.
Damn. They just roasted him.
Is that man wearing Crocs? What are those?
Those are what's the Chinese version of a croc? Oh, what would you call that?
Alligator. It's the alligator. Gators. That's what it's called. You can even put it on the TikTok.
That laugh.
Let them see how our men are living here. F, to keep our children from hiding in bomb shelters. Blit. Wait a minute. Does this guy realize that they're not, like, Russia wasn't being attacked before the war? Like, there was no kids hiding in bomb shelters because there wasn't a war going on. Well, you know. Film my batch. My batch. Dude, I've heard some pimps sit there and say, batch, give me my money.
Dang, man. You're wildin'.
Man. The patch says special...
What the hell is that?
Dude, it's a Brexit geezer. It's a Brexit geezer holding a freaking 44 Magnum, and it says special combined detachment, the old timers.
Man, that's like Herbert the pervert with a cane holding a shotgun, a double barrel.
Dude, that guy comes up to your church and he goes, HARISON, I saw you putting on the lotion. And you're like, out of a company of 86 people, only 7 of us made it out. That's why we do not lose hope. We 7 have remained so we can return home. And mention that we drink pure alcohol as opposed to that unhealthy,
Oh,
unpure alcohol.
You don't say you drink alcohol. I couldn't have told. Who would have guessed that?
Man, they're going to whip out the jerry can in a minute. It's going to be like, it's gasoline. It's not even vodka. That's how tough we are. 7 made it out. The Almighty has allowed us to keep on living. We clean our rifles with pure alcohol too. Yeah, it's gas. It's gasoline. They're drinking gas. Show them our little boys. That sounds so bad.
Phrasing.
Hi, I'm Chris Hansen.
Jeez.
Have a seat. So I heard that you were bringing a...
Especially after that patch, it's like, geez.
Hi there, son. We got the little young'uns here. It's like, oh, here they are. Oh, they're guns. Thank the Lord. I seriously thought they were about to show, like, kids. I was about to be, like, freaked out. Here they are. They are resting and waiting for their time has come. For when their time has come. Show the old man with a machine gun with anti-armor bullets. Yeah, those come standard with modern war. The armor-piercing thing's kind of just normal now, but, you know, maybe it's new to them. They gifted us this one yesterday. It will give us life, Leah. Today, the Ukrainians will have a disco party. The old one will spin 2 vinyls, bleh.
Yeah, these old grandpas aren't lasting more than a few more days, I can guarantee you.
I'm pretty sure they won't be, man. Like, one bad move and their back's thrown out. So I think they won't be making it that long. And I'm sure, Matthew, the Ukrainians will be more than happy to... well, we'll keep that joke in the up the sleeve. Moving on from that and into the next area, we also got to see a Russian command vehicle being destroyed by a Ukrainian deep artillery strike today, conducted by a GMLRS rocket artillery system. Have you ever wanted to watch your Russian trucks get blown up into a hellfire and fury with your commander inside? Well, you, my friend, are in luck. Introducing the all-new Russian Commander Vaporizer 9000. Watch your Russian commander turn into hamburger meat in 5 seconds and be cooked well done before you can even pull them out. Check it out as the front cab of this truck burns from the gasoline and under the fuel tank. Guts, no glory, the Russian army. Or as we call it around here, that batch army. But anyways, moving on from that clip. It's absolutely beautiful to see that a Russian commander was knocked out, hopefully inside of the command post. The command post is a confirmed loss, but we don't know if there was a commander in it or not. Nevertheless, it is great to know that the Ukrainians are conducting some deeper artillery strikes in the area. They're also conducting fire support for Ukrainian forces on the other side of the river. It does show that things are still moving towards Ukraine's favored position in the war, and hopefully it will continue to. If the Ukrainians are able to make a breakthrough in this area, which we have not seen yet, but we probably will see maybe at some point in the future, they will be able to make it down to Armyansk, which is the most suitable location to advance into Crimea from. The Russians probably understand this, but it doesn't appear that they have diverted any additional resources, manpower, or effort into the area of HARISON to try and stop the Ukrainians from potentially conducting a breakthrough. Now, really quickly, I would like to make a quick mention to all of y'all because I am getting constant notifications on our end from the YouTube control room that our stream is going through incredibly heavy lag spikes and sometimes almost completely cutting off. I haven't seen a lot of y'all in the live chat talking about DDoS attacks, lag attacks, or anything like that, but it does appear that for some reason our connection randomly, and probably for absolutely no reason, is now getting throttled just tonight when we haven't had this problem for about the past month and a half. One thing I have to say...
Oh, yeah, it's definitely lagging me. So on my end, there's like a huge delay in between you talking and like me talking. There's like a massive 10-second delay.
Yeah, that's probably a good indicator that things aren't going well. And really quickly, before we move on tonight, I just want to let y'all know that while we may be lagging, this is not going to stop the Lee Spring Army tonight. I'm not going to let it bother me. I hope it doesn't bother y'all. And if it does, sorry, there's nothing we can do about it. Make sure to hit the like button, though, and share the stream with your friends and get it out there what we do because, who knows? We don't really know what this is tonight. We haven't really been able to confirm what it is. It could be a DDoS attack. It could be bad connection. Bad connection would be rare, though, because we haven't had that for a month and a half. But regardless of whatever it is, make sure to share the stream with everyone because we go through our best efforts every single night to put this news out, and no lag spikes or lag attacks are ever going to stop us from getting the news out to all of y'all. And so with that, We're now going to be moving on out of the Kherson area and up into the Kyiv Oblast. A very nice place, and a place where many people like to hang out. But not only do people like to hang out around here, we also got to see that some Ukrainian military units like to train up here. Look at this 2S3 Akitsia that's been covered in white camouflage wrapping to make sure that it's more concealed against the elements. Very nice to see, and a huge effort by the Ukrainians to try and hide some of their heavy-hitting SPGs, at least the ones that they had before the war. In the next picture, we can see a bridge-laying unit creating a pontoon to try and ferry armored units and maybe even supply trucks across in a barge-like configuration. We can also see the little motorboats attached to the side, which indicate that it is being used as some kind of a barge. In their next picture, we can then see them loading that Akitsia onto the barge and getting it ready to transit across the lake. We can now see them transporting it down the lake or river, whatever that may be. And then in the next picture, we can see another Akitsia moving down another dirt road. Very nice. Being loaded onto the barge and then transported to where it may want to go. Oh, look, they simulated an artillery explosion. Really posh. And then in the last picture, we can see the little motorboats continuing to truck it on down to its final destination. Not the movie, but, you know, just its final destination. Still, it's very interesting to see that the Ukrainians have a lot of units, many different units. We've seen the 47th Magura, we've now seen the Presidential Brigade here, we've also seen the 82nd Air Mobile Brigade, all conducting these bridge laying and water transiting exercises and trials to see how well they can conduct them. I'm not saying that that's showing us that something is going to happen, but I'm saying that it's very interesting that there's only one front line where this would be a valuable asset to have in one's repertoire, and we continue to see that a lot of brigades in the Ukrainian army are undergoing training throughout multiple parts of Ukraine to be able to conduct these kinds of river crossings as efficiently as possible. With that, we're now going to be moving on from that little bit of news and on into something interesting inside of Kyiv. Many of y'all know that the Ukrainians are, of course, continuously conscripting and requesting volunteers from the general population, so that way they can defend their country against the Russians. It appears that they put up a recruiting billboard inside of Kyiv that was very interesting, because they depicted the Russians as the Soyjeks, and they depicted themselves as the Chads. We can see over here the zombie Russian horde, the Soyjaks of our propaganda poster, or more so recruitment poster. And then over here, we can see the Chads, with a CZ print nonetheless. Pretty nice stuff, I've got to admit. We can also see that down here at the bottom, it says VC, I believe. And also, this looks like it's specifically for the Azov. Really interesting stuff. But moving on into a close-up of the...
And that poster for recruitment almost looks like a movie production or something. It doesn't look like a military recruitment ad. Yeah, also, look at that haircut on that dude. That's fresh.
Man, that's fresh, man. That's the kind of haircut I got when I went to the barbers recently, and I gotta be honest with y'all, I ain't digging it. But on another note, it is nice to see that they have an interesting little poster here. And also, is that an Alton helmet back there? I gotta say.
No, that's Putin.
Putin? Is that you?
That joke fell flat for a good second.
Man, I had to process how I was going to work.
Ugly looking Russians. Man, that lag is killing me. Like, there's a 10-second delay in between you talking and me talking, and it's killing me tonight.
It's tough. I gotta admit, Matthew, it is incredibly tough to get through. But hey, we're gonna power through. You know, we just gotta not focus on it. We just gotta power through, and we'll do great. But I gotta say, y'all, pretty nice poster. I don't know why I slipped and for a second and called it a propaganda poster. Usually when we see this kind of stuff, it's inside of Russia. So, you know, I just get used to calling it a propaganda poster. But nevertheless, it appears to be an Azov recruitment billboard, and it looks very solid. Mad respect to whoever came up with this thing, and also gotta respect the Chad Ukrainian here facing down the Soyjak Russians. Mad respect. Moving on from that and out of Kyiv, we also got to move on into the area of our location unknowns. And as you all know, there are many locations that are considered unknown. And many of y'all also know that location unknowns are usually where the wild stuff happens. And we've got some pretty interesting clips tonight. Moving on into our first clip, we got to see that a Ukrainian soldier was trying to get a failed round out of a 120mm mortar that just didn't fire. It's a little bit of a malfunction, but they do happen.
Це називається аборт.
Давай, тепер. Перевертай мені.
We see him trying to figure out how to get the round out of the bottom of the tube. and hitting it against a tree. And it
That'll
sounds
fix
like...
it.
Oh, there's progress. It's a baby boy. Oh, man.
Все, підрівняй назад і пробуємо ще раз.
What happened? It just got stuck in the tube or something?
So they dropped it, and it appears that the primer didn't work at the bottom of the mortar shell, and so it just ended up being hang fire, and so they had to end up getting the thing out by smacking the barrel, or, well, the tube around until the thing just fell on out. So, you know...
So it actually is armed, like the shell itself?
I think it is. Like...
Shoo.
I'm trying to think how mortar rounds activate, and it is different from each round. I don't know which one this is, so I can't really tell y'all if this thing is live right now or not, but I would assume it may not be, considering that it looks like the head of the mortar actually hit the tree and it didn't blow up, but still a pretty risky situation to be in.
Все, підрівняй назад і
They have the balls of steel,
пробуємо ще раз.
Piat.
I gotta tell you, Matthew, these gender reveals are just getting out of hand these days. I mean, like, they're getting crazy. I mean, it came out, it's blue, it's a baby boy.
It's so dangerous. Fatal reveal, Bliat.
Man, we running on empty mortar review. That's it, just smacks that thing onto the ground, it blows up. But moving on from that, we also got to see that the Ukrainian Air Defense was very successful today. They were able to take down 21 Shahed 136s and 2 X-59 caliber cruise missiles. All in all, not a bad day. Have y'all noticed that over time, the amount of cruise missiles that the Russians have been using in each attack has gotten down to almost nothing? It's like a handful used in each attack. That's because the Russians have run out of these for the most part. We understand that in every single category, they have maybe around 150 to 100 left of each missile, and so they're starting to really try and conserve their volume of fire with these, so that way they can stretch them out, hopefully over the rest of the war in their mindset. We don't know if that's really going to work for them or not. I have a feeling it won't, but we can see that now most of the Russian aerial attacks are being conducted with the Shahed 136 drones, which are cheap, readily available, and as long as the Russians have some kind of money to pay the Iranians with, it's a practically unlimited supply. But with that, we're now going to be moving on from the air defense's successes and on into our next clip, where we got to see that a Ukrainian soldier got a Bangalore! Hey! Do you know what a Bangalore is?
Hey, what is that?
You don't know?
No, I don't.
Oh, man. I wish I knew how to explain this thing. So, Matthew, have you ever seen the opening of the movie Saving Private Ryan, where they land on the beaches of D-Day?
Yes.
Okay, so, do you remember the part where the guys were trying to get through the barbed wire, and they started screwing these giant tubes together, and they shoved it into the sand, and it blew up, and it got rid of the barbed wire and everything in front of them?
Somewhat, yeah.
So that's what this is, but it's the modern version.
Interesting. I wish I could see an in-action video, but I guess we don't have that.
Let's see. Ooh, I would show the Saving Private Ryan thing, but considering that apparently, y'all, and I'm going to give y'all a little bit of an update here, we actually ended up being copyrighted last night on our stream because we played that Russian song for y'all, I think 40 seconds of it. Turns out, while YouTube doesn't care if other people play it, it turns out that they care if we played it. So we ended up getting a copyright for that. Our content ID, as it's called. So we found out that we can't even play some modern Russian music because YouTube is actually going to enforce their copyrights even still. But moving on from that, this thing pretty much, you just shove it into the ground under some obstacle like barbed wire or something like that. It explodes and it clears the way. That's pretty much the entire purpose of this thing. A very old system. It's like ancient. It's practically been around since I think about the end of World War I, or even a little bit earlier than that. But they still find their way onto battlefields in the modern day because it's a necessity for some infantry units, especially with dealing with very well built-in positions that have a lot of barbed wire or any kind of defenses around them. But with that, we're now going to be moving on from this interesting little picture of a Ukrainian soldier with a Bangalore, and we're now moving on into our last little bit of Location Unknown news, where we got to see the Russian losses. And Российской Федерации lost a lot of shit.
Hey! They like back up 8 Bobcats. I'm impressed. Let's go! Dang, those troop losses, though. Good Lord, I just saw that. The losses have gone back up tremendously. How'd it go from what it was yesterday, where it was very low in pretty much every category, to this? That is a hell of a jump.
It is a hell of a jump, and I get to say, it was a hell of a good day. They lost and also they lost 1,140 Russian soldiers.
Damn, they just must have had a little low day yesterday, like they were taking a nap or something.
Dude,
they woke up today, though.
They were sitting there yesterday, Matthew, like it was a smart board, recalibrating it by pushing the buttons on it, going, wait a minute, everyone, we got to get the Russian army working again. And then they got it done. They're like, okay. And then they went into the day and they went, oh man, we shouldn't have got them working again. But 1,140 Russian soldiers wiped out. A huge number. Not only that, 27 armored personnel carriers were destroyed along with those 1,140 troops. 46 supply trucks were destroyed. Probably one of the most successful days over the last month that we've seen the Ukrainians destroying Russian supply abilities with. We also saw that 15 main battle tanks were also wiped out as well, with 32 artillery pieces getting destroyed, 39 drones, 3 MLRSs, 2 cruise missiles, and 3 anti-aircraft warfare systems. Altogether, it was an amazing day for the Ukrainians to be able to inflict massive losses on the Russians. And not only that, it was just a wonderful day all around. The Russians ain't winning with these kinds of numbers. And, you know, it's a big thing to me to see these kinds of losses. Some people say, out there, what, Enforcer, do you get some kind of sick pleasure out of looking at these high losses? I mean, each one of those numbers there in that 1,140, that was a person just like you and me. Well, you're right, but at the same time, I kind of do end up getting a little bit of joy out of seeing a number like this, and let me explain. You see, it's not because it's just destruction and chaos. These losses here, the deaths of these 1,140 Russian soldiers, are going to be bringing the war in Ukraine to an end quicker. And to bring wars to an end faster, you have to kill more people quicker. That's really just how it goes. It's a direct input system. The more soldiers of the other military that get killed in a faster amount of time, the closer the end of the war is. So seeing a number like this, I have to admit, knowing that it will hopefully be bringing the war in Ukraine to an end much faster than it would be otherwise, I'm pretty happy to see stuff like this. And hopefully we'll see that these numbers continue to stay this high, because if they stay this high, hopefully the war will end quicker, because the Russian army will not be able to sustain such crippling losses like these forever. They just can't. But
is that really true, though? Because if they're recruiting old people, like we saw in the video, even nobody's off the table, basically. The young people, the old people, they'll take anyone. Doesn't that basically give them an unlimited supply of potential troops to get?
I would say, not really, because there's only so far you can take that. Like, the Germans took that all the way, but at the end, the war was going to be lost. There just wasn't anyone working in the factories anymore. Everything was going to crap. There's just a point where the war will end for you. Like, you can try and get the kids involved, get a little child soldier here and there, get, the little Volkssturm going, but it's not going to help you out, because if you're at that point of a war where you're having to draw these people into military service, it's already over. You're just prolonging the end of the war. And that's what we're probably going to see if they really do get heavily into conscripting older men and pretty much boys. The war is probably going to be over for them, at least within the next year or so. That's what I would say. That would be my opinion, but we never know. Wars do end up having a way of dragging out. And we actually heard, I think it was Jens Stoltenberg today, the General Secretary of NATO, he said that he believed that the F-16s even weren't going to really create a massive change in Ukraine, and we would have to prepare for a long war. At this point, I'm not going to lie, I usually chastise folks, for saying things like that. But that may actually be true. We're seeing that the Russians are starting to realize, really both sides are starting to realize, that the front lines are not moving that much. Not a lot at all. And the Russians lost 1,140 guys in 24 hours, and this is all they have to show. Is that there may, and let me see if I can get this right, there may have potentially been a Ukrainian company of soldiers that fell back near Stepove by maybe like 50 meters, and it cost them 1,140 men to do that. When you think about that, there's got to be someone in the Russian Ministry of Defense that is starting to say, we can't make any advances anymore. No matter what we do, no matter what kind of casualties we take, this war is now being measured in World War I metrics of just feet of ground taken, not even miles like we originally saw at the beginning of the war by both the Ukrainians and the Russians. Not only that, I think Ukrainian commanders at this point, much like, let me see, who was it? General Zaluzhny. Yeah, it was General Zaluzhny. General Zaluzhny said a few months ago that the war was starting to enter a little bit of a stalemate. And he said that, of course, more advanced weapons like the F-16 would help to break that stalemate, but it was going to be a pretty tough war. And a lot of people are starting to say that this war is going to be a lengthy one, and it's not going to be over anytime soon. And I've got to be honest with y'all, we are pro-Ukrainian all the way, through and through. Never have questioned our support of Ukraine. There's no reason to, because it's an American interest specifically, and so we will support them unconditionally. But we want our war analysis to be as unbiased as possible, and looking at the situation and looking at what we're seeing right now, a lot of these statements from people like General Zaluzhny, people like Jens Stoltenberg, this may actually become a reality. This war starts to become a little stretched out. I think what we've seen is, and let me go through this because this is going to be a bit of a big rabbit hole, because there's a lot of similarities with how this war is turning out in a big picture to what happened in World War I. What we saw last year could be described as the War of the Frontier. That very early phase of World War I, where the front lines were actually fluid and people hadn't really figured out what the war was going to look like. People were fighting last year's war. They were fighting the wars where it was rapid movements of forces across huge areas, where battles occurred in decisive places, and decisive victories were either had or lost, and you kept on moving. And then as soon as the Ukrainians and Russians really started to pound each other, and of course the Ukrainians had their moments, like the French did at the beginning of World War I, like the miracle at the Marne, where they pushed the Germans back away from Paris and towards a more suitable position for the French army. We saw things like that last year for the Ukrainians, and we also saw other very successful offensives, like the Ukrainian counteroffensive at Kherson and the one at Izium. But moving on into this year, beyond the Russians taking Bakhmut, which was a slaughter and was very comparable to the Battle of Fort Douaumont, which happened in France, and it led to the death of something like 500,000 soldiers on both sides just to try and capture a single fort near Verdun. It seemed as though Bakhmut was a lot like that. The Russians hardly even took Bakhmut, and that was at the beginning of this year. And almost 10 months later, they have not even moved out of Bakhmut. They literally only hold the very outskirts of Bakhmut, and beyond that, the Ukrainians still control it. They have not been able to move forward an inch for 10 months. They haven't been able to do it. And it looks entirely like this war is going to end up being a First World War kind of war. Trench warfare has become very prevalent because both sides are practically on par with their combat abilities and also their technological abilities at the moment, although the Ukrainians are still expanding theirs and growing them to be more competent, more capable than the Russians. It just doesn't seem like this war is going to be ending soon. And, and I know a lot of people get a good thought from thinking, oh, the war will be over. But I don't want to be one of those people who just beats a drum and just says things like, the war will be over, tomorrow or next week. And I don't want to be the person out there putting out a thumbnail, just lying to y'all and knowing that I am, just to get views, saying that the Ukrainians have won today, the war's going to be over next week. I think that this
I personally don't think it's anti-Ukraine to say that, because you have to be realistic no matter what's happening. And even though Ukraine will win eventually, that doesn't mean it's going to end, rapidly, like right now. And there is a poll running on that, so feel free to let us know what you think. But, it looks like it's going to be a long one. And I think the Ukrainian military officials and generals are kind of coming to that conclusion as well. And that's fine. They just have to prepare for it and make sure that they're putting the right strategy in place to actually fight long term.
And also, I see a lot of y'all, let's see, some say it will last indefinitely. And just to actually tie that poll while it's still being voted on right now directly into what we're talking about, I don't think this is going to last indefinitely, but I don't think this is going to be over soon anymore. Of course, a lot of people at this point are starting to ring off alarm bells, and when you really listen to what they're saying and you consider the situation on the ground, it does appear that this is going to start dragging off into being a complete slog. It's going to be a long war. It's going to be a very brutal one, and we need to see that Ukraine starts to shift its strategy towards that field. And what we need to see at this point is the Ukrainians hold the ground they have, which they've done very well, and they continue to do incredibly well at, and we need to see the Ukrainians take the initiative to try and gain more ground. specifically near Kherson. I think that was probably where their hope is going to be, but it's probably going to be the toughest battlefield to fight in because the supply lines are going to be bottlenecked crossing the Dnipro River. Still, I think this is going to end up being a long war at this point. And of course, I hope this is what y'all are here for. I'm not going to be one of those people because I've seen this, and this is something that's really starting to disturb me. A lot of people started off on the Ukraine war being pro-Ukrainian like we were, but also keeping their battlefield analysis unbiased. And we still try to do that, although most of the time it sounds like we are just hard on to Ukraine, just going, oh man, they are doing brilliant, and they have been doing brilliant. But when we talk about big picture things like this, a lot of people at this point, I feel, are living in like a delusion, nearly. Like they are saying the war will be over in the next few months. And from what I've been seeing, and what we used to say at the beginning of the war, which was the war would be over in a few months, and then a few months would go by, and then another few months would go by, and more few months would go by, and now we're 2 years into the war, it doesn't look like it's going to end soon. I would say that if I had to give you all the roughest ballpark estimate, I think this is going to go on at least for another 2 years at this point. Does this mean that we need to stop supporting Ukraine? No, not at all. That means we need to support them even further because we have to get them to that finish line. We've already put in tens of billions of dollars. We can't just walk away now. But what were you about to say, Matthew?
I think the reason why people are sort of fearful to say that the war might be a longer one or prolonged is because people know that the West's attention span is not very long. And even though the war may continue and Ukraine may keep fighting really well, that doesn't mean that the West is going to keep funding Ukraine throughout, let's say if it goes on for 3 or 4 more years, that's a pretty long time. And right now, Ukraine aid is faltering already in the United States and the West. So some people may be concerned that aid might suddenly dry up if it takes longer than, what the experts are saying should be an appropriate amount of time to finish this.
But I'll tell you something. This might be a blessing in disguise. And hopefully this doesn't affect any of y'all here in the Lee Spring Army. But the public seems to be moving on from Ukraine, a large part of it, and they're moving on to other stuff, and I hate to say this because I know people are going to start using this, but please follow our no politics rule because it's strictly enforced. People are starting to focus on the elections in the United States, and not only that, a lot of people are starting to focus their attention on to what's going on down in Israel, even when nothing's happening down there right now. It seems like everyone's just trying to stay on that. That might actually be a blessing in disguise because if people don't focus on Ukraine, U.S. Congress members can really do whatever they want, and that probably means that they will end up continuing to support Ukraine instead of having it as the heavily polarized kind of thing that it's sort of becoming right now because of the current atmosphere in the United States. I'm not getting into that, but that is what it is. And once that election is over, I think you're going to see that everyone's just going to, quietly agree, support that Ukraine is important, and we'll see that Ukraine continues to get support until the war reaches its duration and ends, hopefully in a Ukrainian victory. And I have no doubt, as long as we support Ukraine as best as we possibly can, they will end up winning. If we don't support them, victory may be uncertain. And so, once again, not putting the stakes out there and trying to make them incredibly high, but I think that Ukraine's victory entirely relies on Western support, and hopefully we see that everyone on every side understands that and continues to keep strong relations with Ukraine, and Ukraine continues to keep strong relations with the Western world. But nevertheless, that's my take right now on this war with what we're seeing, and I've got to recap this again because recently I've been seeing something that has been developing in the Ukraine war sphere on YouTube that I find a little disturbing. We've seen the Ukraine war sphere move from actually trying to analyze the war and talk about it in a serious way, and now it seems as though people are just cheerleading, and people are starting to attack people who, have been pro-Ukraine through and through, but they say something that isn't exactly positive about a situation, and then they get pounced on. And I don't really think that's fair to those folks, and I don't really think it's fair to the viewers to lie to folks and not give them an actual true analysis of a situation. It's much like people in the First World War. A lot of news companies, and y'all would be completely blown away to know this, when World War I began, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, at the very beginning of the war in 1914, when Britain joined in, he said, this is going to be a long war. We're going to be in this for, we're going to be in for a penny, in for a pound in this thing. It's going to last years. And you know what happened? He was drowned out by news organizations that wanted to get people to buy their papers on the streets. And those news organizations spun the story that all of y'all know nowadays, is that the war would be over by Christmas. And it wasn't. The news companies back then lied to folks like a lot of people want to now, because they want clicks and views, much like people back then wanted your penny or a shilling so that way you could buy the newspaper and read it. They wanted your attention. I'm not here for that. Of course, you know, I'm here to tell you all the news. I'm here to give you all an analysis of what's going on. And we are pro-Ukraine through and through. But I do not want to take a single moment to try and, you know, lie to y'all or sugarcoat a situation that is starting to become quite evident that this war will be quite a long one. And I think everyone should be ready for that instead of constantly thinking it will be over. And so, you know, that's my take on it right now. I hope that everyone appreciates our honesty, because, you know, I'm sure that while everyone is all into free speech, we'll get bashed for saying something like that by someone out there. Who knows? But I'm not going to compromise our integrity on our reporting and what we see as a frontline analysis, in our opinion, just because everyone wants to completely throw truth to the side and just start cheerleading and say that it's all going to end. So with that, once again, pro-Ukraine all the way through. We will keep on doing the fundraisers to help out Ukraine through the nonprofits, and we're also going to make sure that we still encourage the United States to support Ukraine until the war ends. And I highly encourage everyone in the Lee Spring Army who isn't from America, which is about half of y'all, to continuously contact your members of parliament or your representatives in your national Congress or your national assembly and tell them to continue supporting Ukraine. It is very important that that kind of support continues. But for now, that is what we're seeing, and I think that we need to start shifting our focus and our mindsets to focus on a long-term war and not short-term. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are on into the actual polls. So what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so moving into our first poll and question segment, our first poll says, Henry Kissinger has died at the age of 100, and do you think he left behind a positive legacy? It looks like 41% said yes, he was a valuable asset to the USA. 23% said no, I really didn't agree with his views. 21% said, I shall abstain from this poll. And 15% said unsure or undecided. And on this one, I have to say, first of all, rest in peace. It is unfortunate that he did pass away. And he did make it to 100, which some people don't make it to 100. That's a very long time to be alive. So he definitely lived a very long life. And on this one, I'm actually going to abstain from sharing my opinion. I'm going to actually take the cop-out option. And Enforcer, what say you?
I'm going to have to say I'll have to take a cop-out option as well. But with that, I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one.
And that was a very quick transition to the next one. And our next poll says, do you think the Russian old-timers are going to last very long? And do you feel sorry for them? 71% said they won't last long and don't feel sorry. 14% said won't last long and I feel sorry. 8% said they will last perfectly fine. And 7% said unsure. And on this one, I gotta say, I only feel sorry for the Russian soldiers that choose not to be there. For example, if they're conscripts or people that were forced to fight and picked up off the street and thrown onto the battlefield, those are the people that I feel really sorry for. Now, Enforcer, were the old-timers, were they guys that chose to be there or not? Before I give my answer.
From what we understand, they probably chose to be there.
So in that case, I'm going to say that they won't last long, and I really don't feel sorry. Because if they chose to be there and fight a war that is unjust, then I don't feel very good about that. But Enforcer, what say you?
I will say I don't really feel that much sympathy for them. They seem kind of proud of what they were doing. So if something bad happens to them, it happens. That's completely beyond my control and just a part of the war to me. But with that, I hope that does address that well. And we are on to that next one.
All right, and our next poll says, do you think Russia will prolong the war indefinitely since they have no restrictions on recruiting? 41% said yes, it will last indefinitely. 38% said, manpower alone isn't enough. 11% said unsure, and 10% said no, it will still end short term. And on this one, I have to disagree with the Enforcer just a little bit. I think that since Russia has such a wide recruiting pool of old people, young people, and probably eventually women in mass, I think that Russia isn't beyond that, and they will certainly expand that even further if needed, and that could prolong the war a very, very long time. And the way that they're fighting this thing right now, they're basically sending people into the meat grinder, and obviously Putin's a cold-hearted killer. He doesn't think twice about it. And if that attitude keeps up, then this war could last for many, many more years. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say, I would have to disagree with you, Matthew. Oh,
What?
that's a shocker. I think it can only last a few more years. You make a good point. The Russians do have a massive recruiting pool to work off of compared to Ukraine. Ukraine has a population of 40 million. The Russian Federation has a population of approximately 120 million, but that is dropping about 500,000 a year at this point. They're not actually gaining any population, they're losing it every year. But there's only so long a war can go on that is determined by other factors. World War II was a very rare exception where a country was able, well, actually both countries, actually no, all three countries were actually able to hang on the Axis powers until the bitter end, either until they overthrew their government or in two other instances where they capitulated, not due to economic reasons or a lack of manpower, just because they had been truly defeated. Germany is, of course, the example everyone's going to think about, and we'll cover that one real quick. Germany had manpower still at the end of World War II, but what had really crippled them was the complete economic deterioration of Germany on the home front. Most of their factories had been destroyed, their economic output was non-existent, and on top of that, they also spent the government's resources very poorly. Projects like the Tiger II, just as a very small example, a drop in the bucket of German military spending during the war, was a complete waste of money and ended up being a massive money pit for the German army as well. For Japan, it was largely that Japan was completely economically wrecked as well by the end of the war. The atomic bombs were just an icing on the cake. Japan's major cities had been firebombed into non-existence before the atomic bombs even dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And due to that, the Japanese were hardly in a position to even try and fight anymore. They had lost all of their oil production, they weren't even able to run their navy, they had lost really any ability to fight, and the economy was in ruins. And so when the atomic bombs ended up hitting Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and also the Soviets started to push in through Manchuria, that was really the point that the Japanese decided it is time to end this thing because it's getting very bad for us and we can't really even afford to keep this war going economically. And also in World War I is probably the finest example because World War II is kind of an exception in that regard because all of these nations were defeated on the battlefield, but economics played a minor part. But in World War I, it was entirely economics that would destroy the German Empire and ethnic differences that would destroy the Austro-Hungarian Empire. In the German Empire, around late 1917, while the French were starting to go through some of their first major mutinies inside of their army as the U.S. Army began to arrive and replace them in some parts of the front, the Germans were also going through the exact same thing. Soldiers weren't getting paid because the Imperial German Army didn't have any money to pay them with. The economic situation was just getting terrible. It was getting so bad, there were actual communist uprisings happening in Germany by around 1918. And when U.S. forces finally started to push the line and just blew straight through the Hindenburg Line, which took everyone by surprise because it was supposed to be an absolute slaughter that America was moving into, but they took over the area with such ease, what we didn't know is that a lot of the German army had actually been moved off of the front lines in the Western Front and had been moved into Germany itself to put down things like the Spartacus uprising in Bavaria that were causing entire communist republics to appear and take control of mass parts of Germany. And that was entirely because the economy collapsed at this point at that time in the war, and because of that, that's why the Germans would end up unconditionally surrendering and agreeing to the Treaty of Versailles. If they hadn't, the economy would have completely collapsed, the country was entering a state of anarchy and civil war, and they would have ceased to exist. And I think that's going to be the big determining factor that we see with the war in Russia. Who will spend more? Will it be the Western nations that support Ukraine that have put a massive amount of effort and dedication into making sure that they can outspend the Russians, or will it be the Russians able to either encourage or gently persuade Western countries through, various means to stop their support to Ukraine, and they eventually end up naturally outspending the Ukrainians because the Ukrainian economy is smaller? I think that's what we're going to see. And that's why it is truly the most important thing. The real front in this war isn't at Avdiivka. It isn't in Kherson. It's in the Congress. It's in the parliaments around the world in this Western alliance that we have, such as NATO. who is going to be able to outspend the other? Is it going to be us, or is it going to be the Russians? That's where the real battle is being fought at this point, and I think that that's the one that people really need to focus on the most, is making sure that Western support continues to be provided to Ukraine, because I think that's where we will win, and I think that's when we will see this war end in maybe 2 to 3 years' time. But with that,
now I'm not trying to be a pessimist, but sadly, I think between the Russians going broke and their economy completely collapsing, or America cutting off aid to Ukraine, which one would happen first? Sadly, I think it might lean toward the direction that maybe the West might cut off support to such a large degree that it ends up impacting the war in such a way that Ukraine can't fight it the way they've been fighting it. For some reason, I'm shocked that Russia hasn't gone bankrupt yet, because I would have figured that by now we'd be seeing some pretty big signs that they're about to collapse. And even though it looks like they're struggling in some ways, they're really not collapsing as fast as some of the economic experts predicted, which is kind of strange. And I wonder if maybe China or someone else is propping them up to prevent that from happening. We know they're sending stuff in, like supplies, food, and things like that, but they must be sending more aid than we think.
And I would have to say, I think the Russians being able to survive this long is a combination of cooking their books and also stripping any kind of spending that is unnecessary. Because we have seen that they are starting to not pay some Russian units, and we've seen the mutiny because of that. We've also seen that Russian roadworks outside of Moscow and St. Petersburg have been completely neglected. So they're not spending any more, funds on trying to keep up the highways or motorways of the Russian Federation. We're seeing things that are indicating that they're trying to conserve spending, but I don't think it's gotten to the absolute worst yet. I still think that at this point, realistically, the Russian economy has a timer on it right now of maybe about another 2 to 3 years, and then that's when the war is going to end. It's going to be massive economic pressures and domestic pressures inside of Russia that may actually threaten the stability of the Russian government itself that is going to lead to the end of this war. I think that's what it's going to be. So with that, I hope that does address that well, and we have been rabbit holing so hard right now. We've got to get on to
That was a good
questions.
rabbit hole, though. That was a lot of good information.
That was a really good one, I gotta admit, and I hope y'all liked it. If y'all did, smack that like button I don't know. Smack that like button like something. I don't know. I gotta come up with something for that. But anyways, let's get on into those super chats.
All right, so jumping right into our first super chat of the night, we have a $50 donation from Frank the Tank, USN, longtime channel viewer and supporter, and thank you very much, Frank the Tank, for that support. He says, my ammo contribution to average about $8 a round, as opposed to the USAF motto of aim high. I say aim straight, and cheers.
And thank you so much for the support, Frank the Tank, United States Navy, and thank you so much for helping this channel to keep on running. And also, what ammo is $8 a round? Is that like 50 BMG? Because that is...
It's gotta be.
Yeah, man, that's expensive stuff. I did see some 50 BMG for sale, by the way, Matthew. I got that little plug. It was 10 rounds of the stuff. You know how much it was going for?
10 rounds of it, 50 BMG, probably about, I'm guessing $100.
$70.
That's not, that's pretty bad, actually. That's 10 rounds. That's pretty rough.
That's $7 a shot right there. I mean, it's not as bad as I've seen it get for 50 BMG. It's a little less than what Frank the Tank is saying 50 BMG is at $8 a round. But still.
But honestly, if you can afford a 50 BMG, like the gun itself, you're probably not worried about the ammo cost. But, the gun itself is like, what, 10 grand or something?
Well, if you get the high-end ones, I think some of the lower-end ones are like $2,000 or $3,000. Let's see. Let me go pull up Barrett, and let me go get an answer for that question, because I know they have, like, some cheaper Barretts that you can get. They're like the little single-shot, like, bullpup-looking things. Let's see. The Model 95, that looks like it might be it, or it might be the Model 99. Let me check the Model 99 first. It's a bolt-action, single-shot, 50 caliber, and it is going at an MSRP of what? Well, dang. You want to tell me? Barrett, how much you're...
All for more info.
Dang.
Give us a call so we can talk you into it.
They don't have a price. Hang on. Let me go Model 99 price. Let's go see what it's...
It's got to be around 8 or 9K. Barrett doesn't sell anything for much less than that.
Let's see. The Model 99. So, I found one, and it is going for, oh my lord, $5,000. Wow. That is so expensive. Let's go look at the Model 95. That's got to be a little bit cheaper, right?
Also, J33 said a Serbu. The Serbu is that single shot 50 cal with like the unscrewable cap on the back of it. Those are pretty cool, but in reality, like the Barrett's a proper 50 cal, and a Serbu is like one if you just want to shoot a 50 cal round, but not really like legitimately have a 50 cal. That's kind of the way to do it. And also, I've been traumatized ever since Kentucky Ballistics shot the thing, and then I think he put in a hot round or something, and it blew up on him.
Man,
it wasn't the fault of the gun, but it was the round.
Dude, he loaded in Bubba's hot load. It ended up blasting the gun apart. Dude, I'm so scared of 50 cals after that. But, it was a slap round, so, and it was an old one, too. So it kind of makes sense. But anyways, let's see. Someone actually asked it. Well, anyways, we got to get back to Frank the Tank super.
We're rabbit-holing hard, Frank the Tank.
We are rabbit-holing so hard, Frank the Tank. But still, thank you so much for the support and helping us with the ammo fund. And we thank everyone for helping us out with the ammo fund. Y'all are helping us to stock up on ammo, keep the lights on, of course, but stock up on ammo to be able to do gun reviews once the exams are over. And the end of the exams is a lot sooner than y'all would think. That's about 9 days away from now, and after that we are going to be free for a few weeks to try and film as many gun reviews as we possibly can. We've got some cool ones lined up. Y'all might like them, and I hope y'all do, because we've been trying to put effort into getting some, or finding, or asking people to show us and let us have some really neat stuff for y'all to see. So hopefully it'll be cool. But with that, thank you so much once again, Frank the Tank, and as opposed to the USA motto of aim high, I say aim straight. And that's a good point. Why aim high when you could actually aim onto the target? Those Air Force people in their 80s on the ASVAB, jeez. But still, thank you so much once again for the support. And by the way, we're not dissing on the Air Force. Y'all are really cool folks. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat is going to go to BC Skyman, the longtime channel legend as well, as y'all all know, and he puts in a $50 donation. And thank you, BC, as always, for that very generous support. He says, Enforcer Matt and Enforcer, we thank you for your hard work and pray for our trip to Ukraine this Friday. Slava Ukraine and Slava Israel. And also, that is really cool to hear you going to Ukraine this Friday. I'm definitely going to be praying for you for that, because it can be dangerous, but good luck on that trip.
And good luck on that trip, BC Skyman. Make sure to stay safe. And make sure to, keep an eye out and always listen to the air raid sirens. But thank you so much for appreciating our hard work and supporting this channel to help us to keep this thing running, BC Skyman. We thank all of the viewers who support this channel, because y'all's conscious decision to support us, like you, BC Skyman, you're helping us to make this thing possible. I cannot stress enough that if it wasn't for viewer support, we wouldn't even be able to be on air right now. We would just cease to exist, because we don't have any safety nets. We don't have AdSense. We don't have sponsors. There's nothing. There's no safety net here. Y'all are the only one. And I got to thank y'all so much, including you, BC Skyman, for always being here, helping to support this channel, and not only that, being one of our most iconic Leaf Spring Army members. We hope that y'all do have a safe trip to Ukraine, and we will make sure that the entire Leaf Spring Army prays for y'all and make sure that you have a safe trip there and back. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support, BC. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the last question in this segment, and then we're going to be moving back into the Ukraine war news.
All right, and the last one of the segment goes to LSA Sergeant Figment, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, LSA Sergeant. And Sarge says, I love how the channel and community has grown since I joined on day 7, and proud to be an LSA member. And this one is for the textbook fund, and also what is stopping the U.S. from invading Yemen and destroying the Houthis.
There's nothing that's stopping us from doing that. The only thing that's stopping us is domestic pressures at home. And I can tell you what pressures that would be. I can just give you the points. Who cares about Yemen? Yemen's a backwater country. Yemen has no economic value. There's no oil there. It sucks. It's stupid. These people are insignificant. Those are all of the comments that would be made if the U.S. actually tried to go into Yemen and stomp out the Houthis. And that's probably the reason why we haven't stomped out the Houthis. That would be my best explanation for that, because beyond that, there is no reason that we haven't. There are no major powers that really try to involve themselves at all with Yemen. Except for Iran, and Iran isn't a major power. They are a minor backwater country. So we could easily go in there and crush them. It's just that nobody's really wanting to undertake that. And also, counterinsurgency, especially operated from thousands of miles away, is so difficult. It probably would be better for us to have a coalition where the U.S. is involved, but it's Saudi-led, and let the Saudis deal with what happens in Yemen, even if their government ends up being structured like a Saudi government and, has all the negative side effects of that, that probably would be a better way to manage the situation than having us over there, because Saudi Arabia culturally is a lot similar to Yemen, and therefore they would probably have approaches to the situations they would be involved in that would probably end up better in the long run. I know that some people are going to be like, but Enforcer, the Saudis are brutal. They still behead people in the streets for committing crimes. Yes, that's right, but that's what Yemen also does. They're very similar that way. One thing that we probably learned very well in Afghanistan is that you can't take an American concept of a federal republic and try and install that into a country that doesn't really have a cultural concept of a federal republic. It just doesn't work. It's a completely incompatible idea. You have to make the solution fit the situation. You can't always use a muscle car for every single race. Sometimes you're going to need an F1.
Oh, sure you can.
Sometimes, well, I don't know about that. I mean, drag races maybe, but I mean, you're in like some situations you're going to need an F1 car. In other situations, you're going to need a NASCAR stock car. In others, hell, you could get yourself a demolition day or derby car and run that race. But you have to know what's the right car for the right kind of race, just like what kind of governance is going to be right for what kind of country. And a democracy is not going to always be the answer. Democracies only exist in societies where there are an incredibly large amount of limiting bodies that exist, and those usually take hundreds, if not thousands of years to cultivate. And we usually see that a lot of democracies either stem from the Greek or Latin philosophies of governance, of course, the ones before the Roman Empire, the Roman Republic, and it took literally from the Roman Empire's collapse around 300 AD up until about 1600s, 1700s for any kind of an actual democracy to actually exist in Europe again. It took almost 1,500 years to cultivate the atmosphere in the Western world for a democracy to exist. And it took that long to create all of the limiting bodies that's there and everything like that. A democracy can't just pop up overnight. It's not that easy. In a place like Yemen, it may need something like a royal family like Saudi Arabia that may actually be an answer to the solution. An answer to the issue, but we'll never know until we actually get involved over there. But I hope that kind of addresses the limitations and the issues that is had as to why we may not be going into Yemen. And also, Matthew, can you read the first part of his super chat off?
It said, I love how the channel and community has grown since I joined on day 7.
And I'm glad that you have enjoyed how it's grown. It's gone through crazy times, and it's gone through less crazy times. The craziest time, though, and I have to admit, y'all, this was just the most insane thing, is when we were the first people to cover the coup going on from Prigozhin, and there were like 22,000 people on at one time on the live stream. That was probably the craziest night that this community ever had, and so many people found the Lee Spring Army over that 2-day coup. I think it was like 7,000 new people found us that day. Those 2 days. And I gotta say, the Lee Spring Army has gone through so much. There has been a massive growth of a community, an amazing one. There's been deceptions, deceit, plotting, attacking. There's been a million things that's happened. And I gotta say that it's been one hell of a journey, and I'm happy to know that all of y'all are here with us right now as we continue to just keep on trucking forward and covering the news. Almost like we did on the very first week of the war, like when you joined. But with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, it's now time for us to finally get into the frontline news. And starting off in the northeastern area, we haven't seen a lot of frontline activity or a lot of frontline changes in this area, but we have seen the Ukrainians conducting some pretty good attacks in the area and inflicting some decent Russian losses. Also, really quick correction, Walter, you are correct. It was 460 AD when the Roman Empire, the Western Roman Empire, collapsed. It was not the 300s, because I think in the 300s, I'm trying to think. I think in the 300s, that's when Constantine I went and actually founded the Eastern Roman Empire, which would later go on to be the Byzantine Empire. I might be incorrect with that. Correct me if I'm wrong. But thank you for clarifying that. But moving on from that, as we continue to be lag attacked, we are now moving on into the northeastern area, where we got to see that the Ukrainians were able to hit some Russians with some interesting stuff. And we got the trap. And we can now see the drone coming on in and doing its thing. And we can see them dropping the bomblet, flinging it onto the Russians, and he hits right in front of the first one. He falls over. We can now see them going for a little bunker and hitting it as well, blasting it away, and the Russians says, oh, like, Zoink Scoop, I think I got burned. Raggy. And they're hitting a Scooby-Doo van, perfectly fitting for what we were just doing. Like, Zoink Scoop, I don't think we're going home. Raggy. That's involuntary enlistment. But anyways, that's the end of that clip. Wonderful to see. Moving on from that one and into our next clip, we also got to see Baba Yaga hitting the Russian drones. Well, I'm sorry, Russian soldiers. And we can see the Russian rolling. Oh. He listened to the manual a little too much. He went, oh, the manual told me, when I see drone, get on ground and start rolling. And so he starts rolling, and the Baba Yaga flung the bomblet down literally on top of him. Oh, my lord.
But did he put the fire out? Oh, he didn't.
I don't think so. I don't think he did.
He said, I heard the Americans say this too, stop dropping rotor. But it was for the fire, not for the bomb.
That's it, man. He said, I am on fire. And then he got hit by the bomb. But we can now see them hitting another Russian vehicle and knocking it off the road. And we now see it burning. A pretty normal sight. But we can also see this Ural 4320 as the crew tries to climb out. One of them makes the way. Oh, we got a crawler. It's a crawler. Crawl. And the camera pans away from him. They're like, eh. And then we see the rest of them running away as the Ural starts reversing back down the hill and then burns up into an inferno. We now see another bomblet hitting near a UAZ 469 Bajanka, which is the Scooby-Doo van.
Do you know who made the original Scooby-Doo van in real life?
It was like General Motors, wasn't it?
I think so. I think it was GMC or something. I was just curious if you knew.
Well, maybe I did. Maybe I didn't. Who knows? Also, we are shedding viewers because of the lag attack. Very sad. But we can see the bomblet hitting the BMP. And we can see Little Russian rolling away again. Everyone is rolling in this video. Like, everyone was told the same thing. We can now see them hitting a Bajanka again. Like, Zoink Scoop, they're killing us. But we can see them hitting another one. Ooh.
Also, if you're curious, I pulled it up because I'm a bit of a nerd when it comes to vehicles. It says maybe a mid-60s Chevy G body panel or a Dodge A100. There's a big controversy on that, actually, believe it or not. There's a lot of Scooby-Doo fans that are fighting about that.
Man, the Scooby-Doo fandom getting a little heated down there. They're starting to kill each other.
Yeah.
But we can see the 128th blowing away a Tor. And y'all know about Tor web browsers, but I'm sure y'all don't know about this Tor that caught on fire. Zoom and enhance. There it is. It's the Tor. Look at that thing in all of its bulky glory, with the radar not deployed. So this thing is pretty much offline right now, and they might be catching it at a good time. Man, I gotta tell you, this lag attack stuff is just never ending tonight.
I'm telling you, man, it's continuous. It's so determined. It's almost like human.
It's almost like it's deliberate, but nevertheless, the Lee Spring Army will prevail. And we can see
deliberation, premeditation, egregious, preposterous.
And downright, let's see, depraved heart.
Atrocious.
Terrible. And we can see the Tor getting hit, and we can see they made a remix out of it. And now you can see a still picture and another remix. You would almost think there's music to this, but no, there is no audio. And people are saying that they've experienced zero lag, but YouTube's telling us on our end the whole time that we are just being lagged out almost completely.
Oh, we're definitely lagging, man, because like the delay, like I said earlier, is still going on right now. Like when you talk and I talk, I can hear there's like a massive, like awkward delay in between the two.
Very interesting. And Captain Lurk said, "Good God, that's a weird-looking vehicle." And yeah, you're right. You know what? You want to see a tour up close? I'll rabbit hole a little bit on that if y'all want, you know. I don't know why I said it like that, but here's a tour. And actually, here's a tour firing off its missile. These things are kind of ugly, I'm not going to lie. I don't really like them much, but they're very interesting because they have a cell inside of this turret that holds all of its surface-to-air missiles. I think it holds like 8 or 16 of them. It's a pretty decent number. And this huge radar here actually has a pretty significant distance, and it can strike pretty good range. It's a pretty long-distance surface-to-air missile system for it being mobile like this. It's still not my favorite, and it is a little bulky, weird, and ugly looking, but this is a very expensive system as well. These things cost approximately $30 to $45 million a piece. So if you see one of these things getting lost, the Russians lost an entire check of the Russian army's abilities. But moving on from that little clip and out of that northeastern area, we're now going to be moving a little bit further down the lines and into the direction near Verkno-Kamyanka, where we got to see the Cordon firing a 100mm main gun, or a field gun, from 1940, well, an M1940. Let me go type that one in. M1944. Let's see, and let me go see. Everything's called an M1944 artillery. And let me go see if we can find this thing. This thing was put into service, believe it or not, in the middle of World War II. From 1944 to 1951, this thing was produced. Here's a picture of it. They actually have a picture of this thing in Tel Aviv, nonetheless. Ironic, right? But that's the gun that they're firing right there. It was introduced into service in the later part of World War II by the Soviet Union. And when you see that the 15th Mobile Border Detachment of the Ukrainian Armed Forces is firing this thing, with Chad music involved. We see them loading the shell. Getting the gun ready. And, ooh, nice plates. And we can see him firing. And now we can see the shell coming in and hitting dead on the mark. Pretty impressive for a nearly 80-year-old gun. Also, another thing that's pretty interesting to me, and you know, when y'all think about it, really do think about this, y'all. This is a big thing historically. Some Soviet gun crew may have used this thing in 1944, and it was put in storage after that, and not used until this war in Ukraine. It's really weird to think about things like that, because it's like, man, that's crazy to think. Like, this thing was around when, hell, the worst war in history, the deadliest war in history was going on, and is being used in Ukraine 80 years later. Pretty wild to think about. And also, Matthew, look at this rig here. He's got the Baker light.
He does. He's also got a really proper fitting like plate carrier for it too.
Man, juice. But with that, we're now moving on from that little clip. Nice to see them hit their target. And we're now moving on into the area of Soledar, where we got to see the ruins of Soledar a year after the Battle of Soledar ended. It had a population of 10,400 people, and now it has a population of none. No one lives here anymore. It's a complete ghost town, and of course entirely destroyed from the fighting that occurred here over a year ago, when the Bakhmut unit, well, not the Bakhmut unit, the Wagner unit was fighting through the areas of Soledar and Bakhmut, and then ended up taking over the Bakhmut and Klishchiivka area of the front lines, and then I believe it was the 9th Russian Armored Brigade that took over this area of the line, but the Wagner had already taken Soledar by that point. And we can see that the city, of course, still shows the massive damage that was caused during the fighting. And I don't know if those were Ukrainian soldiers right there. They look a little kitted like Ukrainian soldiers, but we don't see any armbands on them to indicate if they are or aren't. So we're going to be moving on from that and looking at the rest of the ruins. And of course, incredibly unfortunate to see and think about this horrendous battle that happened a year ago, and now all that's left is a shell of a town in its place. Moving on from that into our next bit of news, in Opitne, we also got to see a Russian T-80BV burning in this area of the front line. And ooh, buddy, that thing be smoking. Call this thing a pothead because it's hotboxing. Oh, turret toss.
Oh,
Rated.
oh man. Can we see where it dropped? I got to see where it dropped.
Oh, right there.
Oh.
Whoa,
Okay,
whoa, whoa.
I'll rate that a good, I would say 8.7 out of 10.
I would give it a good 7 out of 10. It was impressive, but I don't think it got the hype. Man. But with that, that's the end of that clip, and we're now going to be moving on into our next one near Avdiivka, where we got to see the Ukrainians calling up that double tap and hitting the Russians twice. Here we can see our Russian crawling around in the debris. Here we can see our Ukrainian drone now finding them to take them on out. We now see them hitting and knocking it out. We now see the Russians not having a fun time of it. We now see the next drone hitting and, oh, little spicy, I have to admit. Dang, that thing blew away a good bit of the building.
Anybody?
And the Russians are in
there's that little delay right there.
Yeah, it is. A little delay. Bullet.
Oh, look at him, just going for a little stroll. He's like, something's in my eyes.
I think it's shards of bricks. Oh, he's crawling. And now we can see him laying. And now you can see them walking down the road. This guy really does have something in his eye. And now we can see the next drone coming in. And it's going, you ain't getting away so easy. Uh-oh.
The Ukrainian said, I'm going to put some dirt in your eye.
That's what they said, pocket sand. And we can see them taking away another one. He's like, go that way. And he's like, okay. And uh-oh. Oh no. What happened? My man, he went sleeping. Mad respect. And with that, that's the end of the clip right there. But absolutely wonderful to see the FPV drones doing good work now in the area of Avdiivka. Moving on from that into our next clip, we also got to see that a Russian Buk M1 got hit pretty badly, and it appears that the Russians were puking. Here's the clip. There's the Buk. Here comes the HIMARS. Very good combination, resulting in about $15 million lost for the Russians, and an air defense system knocked out as well, in a vital area of the front lines. Moving on from that clip, we didn't get any footage from Avdiivka today. We also didn't see the Russians make any real advance in that area today, so we're just assuming that it's an absolute hellhole there. Massive losses are being taken by the Russians, and the Ukrainians are effecting a proper defense of the city. Moving on from that, and down inside of Donetsk itself, we got to see that a Russian repair base inside of the city was hit pretty severely by Ukrainian strikes. Here's the base. Boof! Boof! And most importantly, and that's the end of the clip. But nice to see that they were able to hit the base, and hopefully they'll be knocking out some Russian abilities in that area of the front lines, at least for one unit. But moving on from that and into the area of Lzove, we also get to see more Russians getting hit by FPV drones. We're going to be muting that. And we see the Russian playing Ring Around the Wagon, and we see the drone playing it with him. It looks like the drone pilot's enjoying this game. And he's like, get away from me, eh? Uh-oh. Uh-oh. I don't think he's gotten away from it. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Oh, he's throwing a stick at it. Oh, he's throwing sticks. Oh, he's missing it, but it's really close. And the drone is still circling over him. He's running for it. He's going for the road. He's ducked. He's grabbed another stick. He threw it at the drone, and the drone came down, exploding near him, and he fell to the ground in agony. It appears that it was able to get him. What a show.
A bot just came in and said, who really won in the war? Stop this BS crap. It's like, apparently you've come to the conclusion, if you think this is BS, what we're saying.
Man, it's like, hell, who's winning this war? You tell me. You tell me. Like, the bot needs to explain. The 3-day war is 2 years long now, nearly. It's like 2 months away from being 2 years long. Tell me how that is winning. That's not winning. If the Russians wanted to actually win, they would have fulfilled their original statement of winning the war in less than a week. Instead, it's almost 2 years long now, and they're still nowhere close to winning. So I would say they're not winning. That's for sure. But with that, we're now going to be moving on from the area of Lizove, and we're going to be moving on down into the area of Prechestivka, where we got to see that the Ukrainians were loading up a Stormer HVM's anti-air ordnance. Really cool stuff. Here's the clip. Oh, I got to mute that. But we can see them loading in the Starstreak missiles, which are a really interesting little anti-air missile. We see him getting the next Starstreak and loading it in as well. And with that, that's the end of that clip. Very nice to see. And we're now going to be moving on a little bit further down that southern front to where we got to see more Challenger 2s with the 82nd Air Mobile Brigade, or the Air Assault Brigade. Here they are right here. And look, this one's got little eyes. So cheeky. I like it. But anyways, really neat. Really nice to see the Challengers. Man, that thing went grrr. And the Russians went but moving on from that and into our one of our last clips in the southern front, we also got to see a Russian BTR running over a mine, which was really beautiful. There it goes. Dashing through the mud in the 1-inch BTR. And it's gone. Little toasty. Little toasty. Call this thing General Electric because it be toasting. Or call this thing...
Does General Electric make toasters?
I don't know, but call this thing Disney Snacks because they're crashing and burning. But anyways.
Whoa, Jack.
Whoa, Jack. Whoa, Jack. Hey, listen, all I'm saying is that you build like $1 billion theme park that doesn't even return any real profits. I'm just saying, you ought to expect your company to fall at that point. And the sucky hotels at the parks, listen, y'all. This guy, what the hell was his name? It was Bob Chapek, wasn't it? What the hell was his business model for Disney? It was just take everything and turn it into an actual, what was it, IP? Is that what it's called, Matthew?
Like, what do you mean by that?
Like, you know how they took the Maelstrom ride and they turned it into the Frozen ride?
Oh, you mean like theme everything after like the franchises, like the movies they created?
Yeah, that's how you kill your company. Like, listen, y'all, I don't care about anything else they say about Disney right now. Here's my actual take. Disney died the moment they could not get away from trying to make everything about franchises. That was so stupid to me. Like, at Epcot, I'll tell y'all this. Right here, where this thing is, Frozen Ever After, y'all know what was there before that? It was a ride called Maelstrom, and it was specific to the Norway Pavilion because it told you about the mythical history of trolls in Norway. It was a legit ride. It was actually, crazily enough, our favorite ride at the entire park. They got rid of it for some boring, unimaginative ride that has the exact same track as Maelstrom about Frozen. I have a feeling that's why people stopped going to the parks. That's my honest opinion, because I didn't really care to go back to the parks. It's like, you know, you do something goofy like that. You take away such a beloved and cool ride that was all about Norway and like actually getting some actual flavor into the park, and you replace it with a movie that was kind of okay. You know, it's like that is how you completely kill my chances of ever coming back to Disney. That was just so lame to me. But anyways, moving on from that, I don't mean
they messed up by going political. That's where they really messed up big time. I just want my mouse. I just want mouse. That's it.
Well,
Mickey and Minnie. Come on. I don't want the politics.
Well, I'm not gonna lie. That I would agree with that too. Just to say that real quick. It's never a good idea for anyone to get political, whether it be one direction or the other. Like, for the NFL, it was back in the mid-2010s. They tried to go right, and then they went left. Both of those were a terrible mistake. Football has nothing to do with politics. It's just football. People don't want to hear about politics. They want to watch football. So don't make it political. You know, it's almost like that with everything. It's like, just don't get involved with politics. You're there to sell a product or an experience. Just get involved in that and don't get into anything else. That's how you end up losing a lot of people. And a lot of people don't get that. We get that here, but a lot of people don't get that. Anyways, with that, it's time for us to move on out of the southern front in that odd rabbit hole, and it's time for us to move on into Kyiv to cover the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky on day 644 of the war, because I forgot the day of the war right there. But without further ado, here is the speech. And he is in a train. And so here we go.
Oh, the train.
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці, українки. Сьогодні весь день в наших південних областях. Спочатку Одеса і область, потім Миколаїв, потім Херсон. Багато питань, майже всі про безпеку, про захист нашої держави, про захист наших людей. Одеса, нарада з військовими, ППО для міста, для області, для українських чорноморських портів, нашого експортного коридору. Я хочу подякувати усім, хто захищає регіон та працює, щоб додати на півдні можливостей протиповітряної оборони. Мав сьогодні нагоду передати державні нагороди для воїнів, які відзначились найбільше. Провів детальну раду з керівниками усіх тих областей, які найбільше постраждали від удару, негоди. І це і Одеська область, Миколаївська, Кіровоградська, Черкаська, Полтавська, Київська. Доповідали урядовці, міністри внутрішніх справ, енергетики, інфраструктури. Я дякую кожному і кожній, хто цими днями працював, щоб відновити рух на дорогах, щоб відновити подачу електрики. Усі рятувальники, ДСНС, наша Національна поліція, наша Нацгвардія, наші комунальні служби, дякую всім вам. Доручив збільшити кількість ремонтних бригад, техніки, щоб якнайшвидше забезпечити людей електрикою. Якщо необхідно, будуть задіяні сили ДСНС та енергетиків з інших регіонів, де не було таких проблем з негодою. Дуже важливо, щоб і кількість пунктів незламності в усіх областях була достатньою для будь-якої надзвичайної ситуації, чи то погодної, чи то безпекової. А щодо постачання тепла в Одесі, є готовність обласної влади допомогти місту з усім, що потрібно для відновлення котельні, яка була ушкоджена через негоду. Відвідав в Одесі центр допомоги переселенцям, зокрема наших громадян, які були евакуйовані із сектора газу. І вдячні за те, що про людей дійсно піклуються. Миколаїв, зустріч з нашими данськими друзями, які працюють в місті над відновленням. Реально дієвий патронат, про який ми домовлялись, України і Данії. Були представники дипломатичного корпусу тих країн, які ми запросили приєднатися до програм відновлення, до програм патронату. Я дякую за таку увагу до України, за таку віру в Україну. Була дуже емоційна, важлива зустріч зі студентами і студентками 3 миколаївських вишів, університети, які працюють, студенти, які навчаються в Україні, заради України, дорослі питання, чесні емоції, чисті, світлі очі. Хлопці, дівчата, я дякую вам за цю сьогоднішню розмову. Ми робимо все, щоб вся наша держава, всі наші люди стали міцніші, завжди були вільними. І нарешті Херсон. Захист міста, захист області. Місцеві керівники представили результати в будівництві укриттів, відповідні плани, які ще будуть реалізовані. Я провів дуже змістовну детальну нараду з військовими щодо роботи саме на півдні, обговорили, що необхідно, погодили цілі. Чітко бачимо пріоритети в комунікації з партнерами щодо постачання. Я дякую усім, хто дбає про нашу державу, наших людей. Дякую тобі, Одеса, Миколаїв, Херсон. Дякую вам за цей день. Слава нашому міцному народу. Слава Україні.
And with that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 644 of the war. And that's only the beginning. of the fun. We're about to be moving into the second part of this stream where we get to, of course, talk to all of y'all about all kinds of interesting things. Some of the leading topics of the night, like what kind of room is Zelensky in that speech, and other things like the folks who helped the channel to keep on running through super chats and also live chats as well. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right. And also, I see some folks saying that the questions still aren't showing up with the polls. And I do apologize once again. We are still on day 10 or 15 of YouTube still not fixing that issue. Maybe they will fix it soon. But anyways, the current poll that is the most hot topic of the night is where is Zelensky? 80% said the train room, 20% said the airplane bathroom, and the option, the third one I didn't put up here, was maybe the electrical closet because there was an electric sign behind his head. But on this one, I would have to say it's probably a train, although you really didn't hear any train noises, which is kind of odd. Maybe he has some good noise canceling or something like that, but I don't think it's an airplane bathroom. But Enforcer, what say you?
I think it was probably a train because he's most likely in Ukraine right now, and that did look a lot like a train curtain on the right side. So it's probably a train, in my opinion. I'd have to go with the 80%. Also, by the way, before we even get on to the next one, important announcement that we forgot to make at the beginning of tonight's stream. We will not be running a live stream this Friday. I know, very sad because we run our 6-day schedule, but we both have a final exam for a specific class. I'm not going to say which one, but we have a final exam that is going on from 2 o'clock in the afternoon to 5. So I would not be able to even have time to come home and really get all of this news together well enough and be able to research it well enough to be able to give frontline analysis and talk about the actual situation. So instead of giving y'all a half-baked live stream, we've just decided that we will not be running a live stream this Friday. Instead, we'll probably be using the time to get ready for the next exam and also just try and survive for the most part. We'll also we've gotten an invitation from a few friends, for one of the few times we've been able to enjoy anything during the entire war, to hang out and have a barbecue. So that was really nice of them because they were wanting to, talk about law school and stuff because one of them's really interested in it and they are just huge into that stuff. So we are going to be spending that time trying to mentally recover from that final and also not give y'all a half-baked stream. I'd rather give y'all amazing news and not run one stream than run a stream and have it be low effort. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. And of course, if you hate to see us off air, just probably a good thing to make sure to hit the like button and help support this channel so that way we can make sure to be on air as much as possible, although that one's really out of our control. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, in our next poll, the last rift is growing between Zelensky and Zaluzhny over the war. And what are your thoughts? It looks like 29% said Russia is fanning the flames, 29% said, a small rift would be normal, 23% said unsure, and 19% said a rift does seem to be growing. And on this one, I will say I'm with the 29% that said a small rift would be normal, because for Zaluzhny to come out and make the comments he made, that doesn't perfectly align with what Zelensky's been saying, and I'm sure that caused a little bit of friction, but not nearly as much as the Russian propagandists would have you believe. So I would say it's a small one, but nothing major. And sometimes the truth needs to be said. I understand there is a need to keep morale high, but at the same time, you can't keep morale so high that you make the rest of the world believe it's going perfectly fine, and then they think, we can cut back on aid just a little bit because they really don't need it, and then that starts causing problems in other areas, such as the aid being distributed to Ukraine. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say there's probably not really that big of a rift happening in between them. I haven't heard a lot about a public rift occurring, and I haven't heard Zelensky chastising Zaluzhny over any statements he's made. So I would say that's probably not happening, and if it is, it's being massively overplayed at the moment. But with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
And we are now moving into our Super Chat questions, and our first one goes to Marion Deemer, who puts in a $30 donation. And thank you very much, Marion, as always, for that support. And Marion says, how is uni doing? And hugs, and you guys rock. And law school is going good for me. I must admit, very stressful time because the finals are very stressful. It's 3-hour-long exams apiece and a ton of stuff to study for each and every one of them. Friday is going to be another fun day at sea, and hopefully it goes well. The first one went pretty well, I think, but we'll find out in about a month. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say they are. It's something. It's a little stressful. It's a little tough. And I don't really have a lot of time to dedicate to studying, but I still try. Although, really honestly, I don't have an excuse at this point because I don't go to school anymore. It's just the exams that are happening at this point. But it's really tough because, to be honest with y'all, running this stream is a mentally and physically exhausting thing most of the time. And so you usually wake up the next day and you're like, dang, I can't study. Like, I just got to sit here and just, like, be ready for the next show. Or, you know, when law school was actually going on, just be ready to survive a school day and be awake for it. Beyond that, it's been going pretty okay, rather than the whole exhaustion side of things. And I gotta apologize for a moment because I know that as law school went on, I started to get a little bit more whiny on stream, always talking about how tired I was and sleepy and stuff. It was because I was tired and sleepy, but y'all shouldn't have to hear about this stuff. Y'all are here for the news. Y'all aren't really here to hear me complain about my day and how tired I was. But beyond that, it has been going good. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support, Marion, and helping this channel to keep on running. And I got to thank you so much for the support because it seems as though less and less viewers are supporting the channel, and that means that each one of y'all who do support the channel are greatly appreciated because y'all are helping us to hang on by a thread. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well, and thank you, Marion Deemer, for being an old guard of the Lee Spring Army and helping us to keep this thing running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And also, I saw Butchie777 say, it's life. Oh, and yes, it is life. And as you grow older, like we've been told forever, it gets more and more stressful as you go. So this is the next stage of stress, which is law school, final exams. Gotta say, probably the most stress I've experienced in my life up to this point. College to me was easy. I breezed through that without a problem. Me and the enforcer did. Not trying to brag, it's just the way it went. But law school is a little bit different. Not breezing through that quite as easy. And obviously, it's not that easy because it's graduate school. It's supposed to be hard. But I'm confident we'll come out with pretty good grades. But anyways, we're moving on to our next super chat, which goes to Anthony Wilson, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Anthony, for that support. He says, do you think that the Russians sometimes leave behind vehicles and other equipment that have tracking devices in it so they can locate the Ukrainian bases of operation and Slava Ukraine and Jaga Jaga mofos?
Dang, bro. Jaga jaga, patches. But anyways, thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep it running. And from what we understand, nobody has been using any kind of tracking devices to trace down where Ukrainian or Russian operating bases are on either side. And we haven't ever seen that happen during the war. And that is so weird because we have seen that some strategies and doctrines have actually been inspired by what is said online. Now, I don't mean to say that we came up with a whole new strategy, but at the beginning of this year, I did say something about why don't the Ukrainians use shotguns filled with birdshot to deal with drones, and then about 2.5 months later, for the first time ever on film, we saw that Ukrainians started to use shotguns filled with birdshot against drones, and it was working incredibly well. You know, it's weird that we've never seen anyone try that yet with the whole tracking device thing. Unlike the shotguns, which just popped up not that long after we made that statement. But maybe they will eventually try that, but we have never seen it from either side yet. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, and thank you so much once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And also, John Albrecht said, the Apple store closed in Moscow, so no more AirTags are available. I didn't even know Apple had a store in Moscow, and if it was there, I didn't even hear it closing or anything. Did you hear about that, Enforcer?
No, I didn't at all. I didn't hear anything about it closing.
The hell?
Oh, dude, I'm trying to roam right now. I'm trying to go grab something that I just saw.
Interesting. Well, yeah, I hadn't heard about the Apple store closing, but what are you grabbing, Enforcer?
Man, I was about to be trying to grab a box of ammo I just saw that looks like it's about to fall off of a table over there, and I was like, oh dang, I want to get rid of that before it falls. And you hear ka-chink, and everyone goes, what was that? You know, and everyone's freaking out. But that was what I was trying to do.
I thought you were about to go AWOL, like, you know, running off and going to get a snack or something. I was about to say, where are you going?
Man, I ain't snacking, man. I can't snack right now. But anyways, with that, I think we're on to that next one. And I'm going to go try and fix that real quick while I see it.
All right. So our next super chat is going to go to Jolly Hiveling, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Jolly, for that support. And I believe you're a longtime channel viewer as well. And Jolly said, what is the latest about the Gripen? And also, enough with animal noises. It's time for pirate slang. Arg.
Arr! And thank you so much for the support and helping this channel.
SpongeBob, me boy.
SpongeBob, me boy. I got my hands on some of that fine Peruvian blow. But still, thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Arr. And also, to answer your question about the Gripen, we haven't really heard a lot about it. There was an offer at some point to possibly send Gripens to Ukraine, but that offer fell silent, and from what we understand, that offer is now dead. We don't think it went anywhere, and we don't think it will go anywhere. But, you know, it's still open somewhere out there. We just don't know if the Ukrainians are going to purchase them or if Sweden's just going to try and send them to them or if it's a lend-lease. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And I got to thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And Din Djarin actually said something very interesting.
I was about to address that one too.
He said, and just to read Din Djarin's live chat off before we get to the next super chat, taking a live chat a little early, Din Djarin said, "You guys will waste your talents in a serious courtroom. You belong in the entertainment business like a video podcast or an FM radio show. Ask Rogan or Stern if it's not a viable career." And that's true, but we have a little bit of a different thing going on, and it's something that we've noticed, and it kind of concerns us a little bit. The court of public opinion is a very fickle one, and not only that, we don't run a lot like Rogan or Stern, where they have sponsors that give them set pay rates or salaries or contracts or anything like that. We live on a razor's edge, really, compared to almost every other YouTuber out there, because we rely entirely on viewer support, and that can massively fluctuate from month to month, day to day even. And while it's incredibly fun to do, one thing we have noticed, and we've brought up a few times because it's of course quite concerning to us, is that viewer support is slowly dropping, and it's getting to the point that we're starting to wonder how long we can even remain on air. We don't say a lot about that on stream because it isn't any of y'all's issue. If we can't be supported enough, the channel just ends, and we have to go, find something else to do to be able to pay bills. But that's something that's always a bit of a concern to us, is when does it shrivel up and die? And it seems as though right now, I don't know, we may be, well, I don't want to make that into existence, but it seems as though things are getting a little tougher on our end right now, and it's concerned us a little bit, to be entirely honest. And that also adds to my stress, because then I have to think, like, what are we going to do? Because if the and I'm not going to go through all that detail, that's too much. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well, because if it wasn't for go ahead.
Also, just another comment with like Rogan and Stern, for example, like y'all notice that a lot of their career has been revolving around controversy, like things like squabbles and stuff. Like Stern and Rogan even had a squabble between themselves at one point that I think is still ongoing. And I honestly don't want that for my life. I don't like constantly squabbling with people on a petty level like that. If it's going to be a squabble, let's have it in a nice, serious environment, like a courtroom or something. That's more of my thing, I believe.
I would say so.
You like squabbling out here in the public, Enforcer?
No, I don't. I don't at all. Like the one thing that we tried at the start was to try and be friends with everyone on YouTube, and just reach out to anyone around and try and be on good terms with them. And then we realized that everyone was so quick to stab you in the back on YouTube that there wasn't really a point in even dealing or talking to anyone, because they only care about eventually trying to find a way to put you down, to elevate themselves, and the only time they want to be your friends is if they think they can get an inherent benefit. That's something that we've realized after doing this over time, and it's been a little unfun on the YouTuber to YouTuber end. On top of that, we also get ostracized, and this is something that, people act like is a bad thing. I think it's a good thing. We end up getting ostracized because there's a lot of virtue signalers out there who want to act like they're righteous and mightier than thou, and we don't act like that. We just act like normal people. So they don't really want a lot to do with us, or they don't want a lot to do with us because we don't jive with them. Like we don't listen to grunge rock music. I listen to traditional music, so already not connecting there. And also on top of that, I'm a huge history geek. Most people aren't. So then, don't connect there, don't vibe there. So, people just don't end up making a connection with us, and they don't really care for us. And I'm not really and this sounds so stupid because it's like, I'm not like other girls, but I'm not like other YouTubers. There is really no other YouTubers that we found that are like us. And that's been something that's like, that's something we'll also experience in the legal world as well, truth be told. But it seems as
That's
though
fine though, because the legal world's all about an adversarial environment. Like literally, you're fighting with everyone. You're fighting the other side's attorney. You're fighting the judge. You're fighting pretty much everywhere. Sometimes even the client. Sometimes because sometimes clients can be a little bit fickle. But it's accepted there. But out here in YouTube, you wouldn't think that fighting was so frequent, but would like the element that there is on YouTube of people that just like thrive on drama and fights. It's just a rampant thing, and I wouldn't have expected that.
Yeah, and you always expect, and then when you look around, it's not even the case. For some reason, it was just an illusion. You always expect that people would get along and stuff, and then they don't. Like, people just want to go out of their way to, like, pick fights and mess with people to create some kind of a drama so that way they'll be relevant. And I'm not like that. Like, I just don't care. It's like, and then you have to get drawn into it. Otherwise, it's just a relentless, just crapping fest on you. So then you have to try and defend yourself. And then when you try and defend yourself, then people who never had anything to do with what was going on, they want to hop in, and then they want to give their 2 cents and bash you for defending yourself. It's a whole thing. It's not really that fun on that end of things. And also on top of that, we don't really know if hell we would even be able to hang on with how things are going. I don't mean to put it out there like that, but that's starting to become a concern. But with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat is going to go to Butchie777, who puts in a $20 donation. And before I read this off, Butchie actually said in the live chat a second ago that we are like the Top Gear of YouTube live streaming. That is a huge compliment. That is a massive compliment. I'm a massive fan of Top Gear and what it became the Grand Tour later. And sadly, I think that got even canceled for some reason. But I'm a huge fan of the Top Gear trio, and that is a huge compliment. Thank you very much for that, Butchie. And Butchie's super chat says, do you think the Ukrainians have been waiting for the ground to freeze before bringing up the Abrams? And could there be a winter offense or offense on the cards? And love what you guys are still doing after all this time. And Shoigu!
And Shoigu! And thank you so much for the support. And there may be a winter offensive that's coming up, but I'm gonna have to temper the expectations, because we saw that the first 2 Ukrainian counteroffensives were wildly successful. The southern offensive was not that successful. In fact, I would consider that one to be. No, I'm gonna shake some things around, but that almost seemed to be a minor Russian victory, because they didn't even make it to Tokmak, and I was expecting that they'd at least make it to Tokmak, and they're still 12 miles from that, and they only advanced 2.5 miles at the deepest, and that was at Robotny. In my opinion, I think it's showing that while there may be a winter offensive on the cards right now, I don't think it's going to be making any kind of a big advance. I don't think any side is going to be making a big advance anymore. That's my honest opinion. We'll see if I'm right or not. And I don't mean to, just like make it sound like this is going to be a slog, but it is, and I'm going to be honest with y'all, and I hope y'all just appreciate the honesty instead of, like bash me for wanting to hear amazing things all the time. But I think this is going to last a while. We're not going to see a lot of frontline changes from either side. The Russians aren't going to take any ground, as we can see. They can't. And the Ukrainians look like they can take ground, but it isn't much at a given time. Oh, and it would take decades at the speed that they're going at right now to be able to take back most of Ukraine. Well, occupied Ukraine. So I would have to say it's going to be a bit of a tough one. Yes, there may be a winter offensive going, and they may be waiting for the ground to solidify to use the Abrams, but even then, it might be a little bit of a tougher battle to conduct. But that's just my opinion. Hopefully I'm wrong, and I hope I'm wrong on that, but that's what it's looking like it's starting to pan out to be. But with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one is a super chat from Mark Rockcliffe, who puts in a $10 donation, and Mark did not leave a comment, but thank you very much for that support. And also, Mark Rockcliffe. I believe you are a longtime channel viewer. But anyways, Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta thank you so much for the support, Mark, and helping this channel to keep on running. One of the many Marks. We have Mark Hooper, Mark the recidivistic drone operator. We also have you, Mark. And I gotta thank you so much, Mark, for the support, Mark, and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. And so thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we've got a $15 donation from Margaret Hemsley. And thank you, Margaret, as well. She says, Andrew, tell me what is the most unique gun you own? The super chat will pay for 5 minutes of person protection.
And I thank you for the support, and thank you for providing some personal protection. If I had to say the most interesting gun I own, I'm trying to think, which one would it be? It's probably... that's a damn good question. Which one would it be? Man, Margaret, you're asking the questions that count, aren't you? What would you consider the most interesting gun to be in my collection, Matthew? Maybe you would have a better concept.
Well, my interests aren't old guns, so I'm going to pick one of your newer ones because that's the only ones I'm honestly interested in. No offense or anything, but probably the P90.
The P90 is a pretty cool one. We're starting to get into some of the guns we haven't mentioned on air that we've gotten to review. But I do have an FN P90, and that's a pretty cool one. But honestly, probably not the coolest one in the collection. If I had to go with two of them, because I'm kind of tied in between these two. I was like, this is a tough one. It's either, and by the way, this isn't a bad thing. I'm just holding it for fun. But this Colt 1903 hammerless pocket pistol that I have in my hand from 1914, or it is the M1D sniper that I have that is unfired and still in its armory wrapping. One or the other. We have them to review, and I hope that we get to review these because the Colt 1903s, the pocket pistols. Let me pull up a picture of one of these for y'all because I didn't know about these until a few months ago, and I started to get really big into them, and they are so neat. They are the coolest, but this is it. You probably never even heard of these before, but they are really cool. They're chambered in 32 ACP. Bit of a smaller round, but, it still does its job. And it is one of the first concealed carry pistols in the world. It was semi-automatic concealed carry pistols in the world. This one was designed by the famous John Moses Browning, who designed the M1917 machine gun, the M2 heavy machine gun, the first semi-automatic shotgun in the world. He also designed the first concealed carry semi-automatic pistol in the world. Like this thing, it's amazing what that guy did. I'm a huge fan of John Browning, and I'm also a huge fan of John Claudius Garand, both amazing gun designers here in the United States. This thing is beautiful. Not only that, it still holds up in the modern day. With this thing being 109 years old, it still holds up. And you know what? Angry Penguin asked, where is the safety? Oh, buddy, am I going to blow you away? This thing is the size, and Matthew's been able to can back me up on this. This thing is the size of a Glock 43. It's a pretty small pistol, and it has two built-in safeties.
Feels a lot more substantial, though, than a Glock 43. Y'all know that the Glocks are pretty much plastic. Except for the slide, which is metal.
Oh, yeah.
And that one actually feels substantial to hold.
This thing is a Boomer Fud's dream. It is raw steel. Except for the pistol grips, it is raw steel. But it has a flip-down safety right there. You can see it on the other side of the pistol. And it also has a built-in palm safety grip, meaning that you have to push in the palm safety on the back of the pistol grip, right where my mouse cursor is, and flick the safety down for this thing to be able to fire. That is something that I think is amazing because a lot of the small concealed carry pistols like these that are around this size usually have very little, if no, safeties on them. And I have a feeling, well, to me, I don't like the idea of that because I feel like in a situation where you panic, you could easily end up shooting yourself and causing yourself a lot more harm than whoever's trying to cause you harm. And that's something I really like.
Oh, man, trigger discipline.
That's what you say until you get scared, and then your finger's going to be on the trigger instantly, and you're going to shoot yourself, and then I'll be sitting there standing over you going, what did we learn today? What did we learn? But this is something that I really like. This thing is so narrow. Like, it is, I can't tell y'all enough. This is a pistol right here. This one's still in its original box, which is pretty cool. But this is the pistol right here that I would recommend as a concealed carry pistol. The design, yeah, may be from 1903, but I still think it stands up as probably being one of the best concealed carry pistol designs I've seen, in my opinion. And also, the design is rounded off. Like, look at this one here. Well, actually, let me get you all a higher definition picture. Look at this one here. The back is rounded off. The hammer is concealed inside of the slide. There are no rough edges or hard points that this thing is going to get stuck on if you had this thing in your pocket. You're going to be able to pull this thing out really easily. Something you can't say about some other concealed carry pistols. John Browning knew what he was doing 100 years, over 100 years ago at this point. This is like 120 years ago. He designed this thing. He knew what he was doing. This thing's beautiful. This thing's great. The M1D Sniper, moving on to that one, Margaret, since I brought that one up. It is a original Korean War era M1D. This is what it will look like with everything attached. Mine doesn't have everything attached because I was able to get it in its original box from Fort Clinton with all of its parts unissued. So they're all still in their original packaging over there in the corner. But I was able to get this little M1D for literally nothing. It was bizarre how it was literally nothing. I was like, what the hell? But I've had it checked by an expert. Thing's real. It's authentic. It's an actual real sniper. It's not a replica or a fake or anything like that. Has the real M84 scope, has the cheek pad, the little muzzle flash. This one actually is not the T37. It's the one that looks like a trumpet, or the Loudener as they called it. This one's really cool because only 5,000 of these things exist in private collections across the entire United States. And this is probably a good picture to show because mine has the box, it also has the letter, and it also has all the unissued parts as well. But they put the cheek pad on this one, which I didn't do. I never took my cheek pad out. But those would be my two favorite rifles in the collection so far. They're really cool, really neat histories, and not only that, they're kind of getting on towards the more rare side. But still, I thank you for the support, Margaret Hensley, because not only are you providing us with the ability to get security, you're also providing me with the ability to be able to try and get cool stuff to review, like these things. But with that, I got to thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, Margaret. You've been around for ages, and if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this thing running. And so thank you so much once again. I hope that addressed that question fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
All right. And also, I saw BC Skyman say, I have a nice 1903. And BC, you have a very nice gun collection as a whole. Like, your gun collection, I think, might be more insane than the Enforcer's. So yeah, huge shout out to you on that. I can't remember which gun it was you showed us a while back. You sent us a picture of the whole collection and also something else, but it was very cool. I wish I could remember what it was. Enforcer, do you remember what the picture was about?
Where were the pictures?
You sent us a picture of a specific gun.
Was it over Twitter?
I think it was on, maybe, I can't really recall, to be honest. I think it might have been Discord.
I don't think I ever got.
Don't show it though. I don't think you want us to show the actual picture, but you know, I just wonder if you remembered it.
I don't think I ever got those pictures. I think it was only sent to you.
Oh, well, you didn't get to see it then. Damn.
Man, I would know it if I saw it, but I haven't seen it. So, but also, BC Skyman said, let's go check him out sometime. Oh, I want to. I would love to. Moss 49 shooting 7.5 French. Oh, that would be cool. That would be cool. I would love to do that. We've been trying to set ourselves up for these gun review things as best as possible. We've been able to talk to some folks who manage a pretty big marksmanship program here in America, and they have offered us the ability to possibly collaborate with other gun review YouTubers, which, like with our experience with YouTubers already, it's like I could go with or without doing that, and I would be perfectly fine if we didn't. But we've also been offered the ability to use a very special range here in Alabama that is known nationwide, especially in the marksman world, as our personal range to be able to review guns at. We'll of course have to check up and see if that's still going on, because that was just an offer. We actually didn't accept it or anything yet. But that would be really cool if we could do something like that and be able to review there. But still,
strange enough, that place you're talking about just followed me on Instagram out of the blue yesterday, and I was like, oh, look at that. Like the nationally known range is like following me on Instagram. That's pretty cool. I guess they must have done some research into us.
Wait, hang on. Are you talking about the one, like the one where they have like the boom booms that I've been able to get?
Yeah, that range. They followed me on
No
Instagram
way.
just out of the blue.
No way, they didn't follow me.
Yeah, for real.
I was the one who was there. Why didn't they follow me? Dude, that's crazy.
I don't know.
Man, so they did. So they didn't follow me, but they. Oh, that's sad. I feel betrayed.
Well, I'm not chopped liver over here. I mean, they're like enforcing Matt. They found me.
Man,
enforcing like, are you telling me they followed you and not me? What?
Man, dude. I remember going there, and what was crazy, y'all, is that I went there and I was trying to get an M1 Garand so that way we'd be able to review that in the future. And the guy behind the counter where this place was at, he was like, your voice sounds familiar. I was like, really? I was like, you watch YouTube? He was like, yeah. I was like, you watch anything on the Ukraine war? He was like, yeah, I was actually watching another channel last night, and I ended up, I think, coming on to another channel where it sounded a lot like you. I was like, was it called The Enforcer? He was like, yeah, it was. And I was like, no way, that's me. And he was like, really? And so it ended up that this guy is like the second to the top in this organization. He's right under the director of the organization, and he was like, yeah, like your channel's great. If you get into gun reviews, call us up, ask for me, and I'll have this sent up to the director, and we'll see about having this approved, where you can use this range, well, the specific range that they have for gun reviews. And I was like, hey, thanks, that's really nice. So he said call back in a few months. It has been a few months since then. So we will be trying to call back and see about doing that maybe, or going to another range, because we actually have several of them lined up. And we also have a couple of people that we've also been able to line up as well that will possibly let us do some very cool things. Hypothetically, there is the chance that we may be able to do some automatics. But we don't have that ironed out yet, and I'm not going to give a lot of detail on that. But there may be a possibility that we may be able to review some really crazy stuff that would be really cool to see. But with that, we are on.
I've got the camera gear ready, got the whole kit ready to go. Just need to get it filmed. Just got to get these exams out of the way.
We just got to get the exams out of the way. That's it, and then we'll be able to review everything. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. And y'all know what's up. We're on to the next one.
All right, the next one goes to Dana Estes, who puts in a $25 donation. And thank you very much, Dana. She said, thank you guys for always making me sound so intelligent when I speak to anyone about Ukraine. And as U.S. support wanes for Ukraine, will Europe step up support to keep Ukraine as a buffer and dwindle down the Russian forces?
Well, Dana, to answer the last part, in the words of what someone said to us, "Oh, this isn't a pissing contest." Those
but
words,
is it though, Mr. Arrogant?
Who knows? But anyways, I would say they better, because and I'm just saying this. I don't have any control over what the U.S. government does. You can write your Congress members all day. They will do what they want, and if you don't like it, vote them out this upcoming election. Just vote them out if you don't like what they did, and you find this to be very important. But I don't control what they do. And so if they end up stopping their support for Ukraine, which seems to be a unlikely possibility in my opinion, but it is certainly like a 25, maybe 30% chance, there's going to be a vacuum. The United States provides, from what I understand, nearly 60% of the military aid that's provided to Ukraine on an annual basis at this point. And if the Europeans actually find Ukraine to be worthy enough of a cause, they better step up and support, because if the U.S. isn't supporting them anymore, they're the only ones left. And so if they seriously do find it a big enough concern, they probably better start supporting them if that starts to become the future we live in. And I've got to say this as well. I just got to say this. Yes, it would be sad if the U.S. stopped supporting Ukraine. But if the Europeans end up also not supporting Ukraine as well, and they let them lose and provide pennies of support, although Europe combined has an economy that's just about $2 or $3 trillion short of the U.S., they have no right to complain and blame the entire thing on America. They were the fallback. And if they can't even be the fallback, then they cannot come back and complain to the United States. Yes, the United States stopped their support initially, and we were the major supporter. But at the same time, the Europeans cannot always act like it's going to be America's fault for everything. They had an equal ability in this hypothetical scenario to step forward and support Ukraine and fill in the gap the United States left. Although that would be a terrible idea for the United States to do, they would have no right to complain if they also completely fell through on the support. That's my opinion. That's my take. But that's what I think of that. And also, to address the other part, and let me make sure to get to your super chat again, just to take a look at it. Thank you guys for always making me sound intelligent. Well, I thank you so much, because I don't think we always say the smartest things on this stream. I mean, there are some things we get wrong, like the fall of the Western Roman Empire. I got that wrong by like 100-something years. But I do thank you for thinking that we sound intelligent. It's good to sound intelligent. I hope that it does help out in having discussions, because there are some channels out there. There are a lot of people out there, y'all. And I've seen this in the Ukraine war, pro-Ukraine side too. There are people on the radio here in our city that will go, the Ukrainians are losing the war. They're losing the war. They're just losing it. They're getting their asses beat. And then they will never add anything to that to really prove their claims. And then there are also equal people on the pro-Ukraine side that go, Ukraine is winning the war. They're winning every day. It's going to be over next week. And then they never give any proof as to why that's the case. I hope that we don't do that on this channel and we actually give you all a fair assessment. Because while everyone's pro-Ukraine here, no doubt about that, I still think it's important to actually have a real grasp and understanding of reality, because if you live in delusional land, that's how you end up just losing everything. I mean, that's how the Germans ended up losing World War II, was because the entire higher-ups of the German government were in delusional land the entire time. That's how you lose. So hopefully we are able to assess the actual issues and the great things that are happening and make sure to, you know, improve everything overall, or at least improve the understanding of it. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. If it wasn't for folks like you, Dana, it wouldn't be possible. And I thank you so much for those incredibly kind words and supporting us to help us to keep this thing running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one is going to go to Schmog, who puts in a $20 donation. I know Schmog has been around for a very long time, so thank you very much, Schmog, for that support. They said, do you think the introduction of F-16s into the conflict will actually be able to provide effective combat support and allow Ukraine to substantially improve their position and bring this conflict to a successful conclusion?
Let's see. I would say the F-16s being introduced is going to be a big change to how the war is fought, specifically because the F-16s can properly conduct seed operations, which is something about searching and destroying active radar or something like that. It's anti-radiation missions or anti-radar missions, which destroy SAM sites. That's going to be the big thing that the F-16 provides out of everything. And once they are able to take care of Russian SAM batteries, I think we will see that the Ukrainians finally get air superiority and it's not contested any longer, and they'll be able to leverage that to help out their offenses on the ground a lot more than they would otherwise. It still will be tough. There are still man-pads abound, which are going to always be an issue.
Oh, lag.
Oh God! You scared me when you said that. It sounded like we were being, like, robbed or something. You were like, oh! And I was like, oh! But let's see here. Oh, dude.
Oh, we are being robbed. We're being robbed of our airtime, man.
Oh, God. It's going to go overtime.
We're being robbed!
Oh! But anyways.
Whoa, Jack.
Whoa, Jack. Whoa, Jack. Whoa, Jack. But anyways, hopefully the lag's over now. Maybe.
I think so.
So, where was I? Oh, yeah, the F-16s. They'll be providing sea missions. I honestly think they will help the Ukrainians to make offensive gains. But it seems as though some other people like Jens Stoltenberg are not in that camp. And they're actually thinking that the F-16 isn't really going to be changing much. And that might be true. But in my opinion, I'd like to hold out hope that the F-16 can be a game changer, because the ability for it to effectively conduct an anti-radar mission is a big deal to me, and I think it will be once we see it on the ground, well, in the air. But like everything, we're not the final say. We could be wrong, so we'll just wait and see. But with that, I hope that does address that well, Smog, and thank you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, this thing wouldn't be possible. And so with that, on to the next one.
And also, real quick, I put up a risky poll here. It could have gone south for us, or it could have gone good. It looks like it went good. The question is, do you think that the view/analysis given on the Enforcer channel as a whole is usually balanced and thoughtful? Not necessarily always accurate, but is it balanced and thoughtful? 78% said yes most of the time, 11% said unsure and undecided, and another 11% said no, it's usually not. And to the 10%, Man, what happened? I know a small percentage of that, or some of them, are probably trolls, but some of them probably think that we actually don't give balanced and thoughtful commentary. And if you think we don't, let us know why in the live chat, because I'm actually curious.
But don't be
because
rude about
me
it.
personally, I think it's balanced, but obviously, yes, don't be rude about it. But personally, me, I think it's balanced, even though I'm a little bit biased. And typically, the enforcer is the one giving his analysis. I listen to it, sometimes in silence, and sometimes I offer my own side of it. But generally, though, it seems pretty evenly balanced. Not too, cheerleading and stuff like that. But, look at the most of the time creeping down. Did you see that?
Let's see here.
It just crept down when I was speaking about it.
Oh, look at that. Yeah, it's starting to creep.
Look at that. But anyways, Enforcer, what say you?
I would say, well, there was not really a lot for me to say because it's tough to look introspectively. But I would say, I feel like we usually do a good job at it. I'm going to be very biased because we try, so I'll always think we're doing a good job. But I feel like we try. We try and be as accurate as possible. Not to, stroke my own ego, because, a lot of people, a lot of haters say I do, but we have gotten a lot of stuff right. Let me think. The war would last longer than a week. The U.S. would supply Abrams to Ukraine. The U.S. would also supply aircraft to Ukraine. The Kerch Bridge was hit, and it was knocked out multiple times. We did see that the Ukrainians continuously struck the Black Sea Fleet to try and destroy their cruise launching abilities. We saw that the Ukrainians were able to successfully conduct counteroffensives, which a lot of people thought they would never be able to do. We did see that the Southern Front was a little bit tough, although we said it would actually be probably achievable to make it to Tokmak. They didn't make it there, but a lot of people out there were saying that they were going to make it to Melitopol easy, lickety-split, and they didn't. We also said some other things, like Russian losses are incredibly high, and then Prigozhin backed that up when he said that Wagner had taken 40,000 dead just in the Battle of Bakhmut alone. We also predicted beforehand that Prigozhin was going to conduct the coup. I think we did that like 3 months in advance because we heard him on a bus kind of like talking in that direction. We knew that was coming when everyone else was blindsided by it and acted like it was a big surprise on YouTube. We already knew it. Well, we didn't know the exact day, but we knew it was coming. There was a lot of things that we ended up predicting and getting right. And I know a lot of them actually ended up being in direct opposition to some YouTubers that we had talked to. It's something that has kind of been funny to me because we've always, like, I'll tell you all this. In front of the cameras, YouTubers are very nice people. Behind the cameras, I found out that a lot of them are people you don't really want to talk to. Like, they don't really have any social skills, and also they're usually quite rude. And I remember one of them, me and him, I'm not going to say their name, but we were talking about Abrams, and I was saying, oh, I think the United States can provide Abrams. There's not a massive logistical obstacle to be overcome with them. The Ukrainians already have experience with jet turbines with the T-80 series. And they said, America will never supply Abrams, period. And I said, really, why do you think that? Because America won't. And that was their explanation. That was literally all they had for it. And they didn't give any explanations, like the logistics behind it or anything like that. They just said, no, it won't. And they told that to me like they were trying to force that down my throat like it was true. A week and a half later, the Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, announced that we were going to be providing 31 M1 Abrams to Ukraine. And that person ate their words. Now, they of course, they acted like, they could never be wrong, but they ate their words. And I always think about that when people tell me, but so-and-so said this. Because in my experience, I found out that whenever so-and-so has come over here and tried to force us to believe one thing, they usually end up being wrong. And so I never go off of what so-and-so said because they usually don't put any effort or diligence into what they're doing or what they're saying. They just kind of go with whatever they think feels best in their mind or their emotions. So with that, I hope that does address that well. And I thank you so much once again for the support, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible. We wouldn't be able to say stuff like that. But once again, while I will say that we toot our whistle a good bit and, we believe that we do a good job, it's always good to have a little bit of a question as to whether we're right or not, and to not take everything we say at face value. We're people like everyone else, and we are subject to error. We are subject to simple errors, emotional errors. Sometimes we may not calculate things logically. We can end up being wrong, but I'm glad to know that a lot of y'all think that our statements are unbiased and fairly truthful. But with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one is going to go to Marion Deemer, who's already left the night literally just 5 seconds ago. But Marion, if you hear this tomorrow, huge shout out to you for the $20 support. And Marion said, once again, oh, hell, just because.
Aw. Oh, hell. Thank you, Marion, and thank you for helping the channel to keep on running. Support like yours does count massively, and I got to thank you for taking a moment to support the channel. Loads of people support the fundraisers we run on Sundays, but very few support the channel and help us to keep this thing running, and I got to thank you so much for that, because you're one of the few that help us to be able to keep the operations running behind the streams that make everything possible, including those fundraisers. And so thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well, and with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And our next one is going to go to Junebug72, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, Junebug, for that support. And she said, hi, and please take a question from the live chat, and have a good evening, and Slav Ukraine, and glory to all, sacrificing their lives for peace from terrorists.
And thank you so much for the support, and some really kind words as well. And I got to say, huge respect to everyone out there, both in Israel and in Ukraine, that are fighting against raw terrorism at this point. And I got to thank you for giving them some well wishes, and also supporting this channel and helping us to keep this thing running. It is folks like you who make this channel possible. We wouldn't be able to be out here telling you all the kind of news and the truthful reports of what's going on. We wouldn't be able to do that if it wasn't for y'all. And I got to thank you so much for not only giving a huge praise to the folks over there, but also supporting this channel so that way we can tell the stories of all these people around the world who continue to fight against terrorism as a daily struggle. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that well. And also, one more thing real quick, Matthew. I saw Tom Exman say something as a specific account. Yeah, we actually ended up having that problem with them as well, and it was actually live on air. We had a poll. Matthew, you know, I'm going to speak about this quite vaguely, but Matthew had constructed polls that were specifically made for guests we were going to have on air at a certain time. And we made them because they would be interesting to discuss, and our opinions would be different. And so it would be a very interesting conversation to have in front of all of y'all, the viewers, so that way y'all can hash out the ideas, hear all sides, and see what y'all agree with or disagree with. We ended up running one, and it immediately offended this person so badly that apparently they got off our stream, went and bawled their eyes out, and then started bashing the way we formatted our show the next day to someone else on air on another stream. And it's bizarre, you know, because it's like, it's just a point, like, it's why you have to be mad. Like, I didn't even get it. But with that, we are on to the next one.
Man, it was one of those moments where I naturally wanted to get into a debate about it, but I could tell the guy was not equipped to handle a debate. He would have easily gone south, probably left, and, you know, freaked out or something, because he ended up crying later, we were told. But, you know,
and also
strange stuff.
Also, the other thing, here's the other thing that's just crazy. He puts that out on his community post. He said, I'm just devastated. I'm bawling my eyes out. So I reach out to this person. I'm like, hey, are you okay, man? I mean, like, if you want to talk about anything, I'd be more than happy to talk to you about it. I'm fine. And then they go onto a show and then bash our format. And it's like, why be an ass? I mean, like, you know, I'm not...
You know, I didn't even know if you were supposed to feel bad. Like, I was like, you know, I didn't feel like I said anything, you know, that bad to make somebody, a grown man, cry. But it's like, you know, I guess, like, some people were more sensitive than others. But that dude, I found out, was a little bit more sensitive than we even thought.
And you know, yeah, you know, that's one of the things where we were like, you know what, we're not having guests on again, you know. And some people think that guests decided to not come on our show. Oh no, everyone wanted on our show, like everyone did, and a lot of them we ended up just completely ignoring, because at this point we started to find out you know, there's some weird things going on here, and on top of that, a lot of people just want to get in front of our audience to get subscribers or some exposure or something. And I was like, I'm not really liking this anymore, because it's not about Ukraine, it's not about analysis, it's not about having interesting conversations. It's about just how can I get myself ahead by using the enforcers. And that was something where we were like, you know what, no more guests. And that's why we've never had a guest on ever since. That's the honest truth.
Can you imagine leaving our stream and then going and crying later and saying, Enforcement Matt made me cry?
But you know, like, the thing was, it's just like, we didn't even do anything that was, like, worthy about crying about, you know? It's like, like, all we did was ask a question, and it wasn't even, like, a really, like violent or terrible question. It was just a question. And it was, like,
I'm not a mean bastard like that. I wouldn't make somebody intentionally cry on the stream, especially on the night it was. It was the anniversary stream of all nights. It was like a happy night.
Yeah, and oh man, it just thinking about everything that's gone on, it's just it really is something. I'm honestly, I got to be honest. I'm gonna always be honest with y'all. I don't care if it's even to our detriment. I'm happy we don't have guests on anymore at all because, to be honest with y'all, it didn't really seem like guests ever really worked out. Like, ever, depending, no matter like who it was. It just didn't ever seem like it jived or it worked or anything like that. And anyways, we still cover the news fine. We still fundraise fine. And that's all that matters to me. But with that, I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one. But also,
right,
also
and our
quickly,
next one is going to go to...
I have to address
Yes.
this one. Tom Exman said, I remember time got real short for the guests. The thing is, though, is that they all knew that it was only going to be 30 minutes apiece because we had a 2.5-hour fundraising stream. We had a 30-minute intro, and then we had an hour and a half for guests. So we had 3 different segments, one for each guest, and each one would be 30 minutes long. That was pre-communicated to every single one of the guests that were on that night, that it was only going to be a 30-minute long segment for each of them, and they knew that going in. If they didn't like that, they could have asked for more time. Instead, they were more than happy to get on our show. They were more than happy to be there. And then when they get off, well, one of them in particular, when they got off, they wanted to start crapping on how we ran our show, although they already knew how it was going to run before we were even on air. And they knew that for weeks in advance. We had planned that out literally 2 months in advance, how that was going to work. So they knew about it completely. And so that was one thing where I was like, if they had a problem with it, why didn't they address that beforehand? Be like, could we get more time? Maybe like 45 minutes apiece? I would have been fine with that. I would have been like, yeah, sure, let's extend y'all's time to 45 minutes apiece. We'll do that. But nobody communicated that. They were perfectly fine with it. And really, I guess some of them did that just to get onto the show. And then after that, voice how unhappy they were with how our show ran, which is honestly pretty low when you think about it. But anyways, with that, we're on.
And
to
also
the next
another thing that was kind of curious as well is if you even take the age consideration into the equation, like the people we brought on were typically much older than us. So, they come on and get upset that 2 22 and 23-year-old guys who are running a YouTube live stream didn't run it the exact way they wanted, and they proceed to bash those 22 and 23-year-olds that were raising money for Ukraine on a very big night.
Yeah, and completely,
and later going to bash them.
Completely.
It's like, how's grown men who are supposed to be mature and stuff like that going to leave and then pull like a high school move and start doing something like that? I mean, when you really think about it, it's kind of appalling, really.
And completely overlooked that the fundraiser, which was the whole purpose of us running that anniversary show, was a amazing success and ended up raising $65,000 for let's see, what was it? It was Doctors Without Borders. It raised $65,000 for Doctors Without Borders. It was an amazing success and probably went on to help out Doctors Without Borders to save plenty of lives in Ukraine. I mean, they've helped out hundreds of thousands of people in Ukraine. They're the biggest when it comes to medical support in Ukraine. And completely overlooked that and just completely focused on our format. Like, the hell, I don't even get it. You know what? It's not even worth even talking about anymore because it's insane. It doesn't even make any sense. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to LSA Sergeant Figment, who puts in a 10. It says, if there is a heavier Russian presence around Avdiivka, then what exactly is stopping AFU from pushing farther across the Dnipro and past Oleski?
From what we understand, it's really the lack of armor. It seems as though that's causing a bit of an issue because while the Russians still have armor in the area, although it's a limited amount, the Ukrainians have none on that side of the river, and so all of their actions are being infantry-based. That's posing some issues because the infantry is the one that must push forward and create a somewhat safer area for bridgeheads to be made so that way the armor can cross, but we haven't seen that at the moment. And that's really why we're having an issue right now in the HARISON area, is that it appears that a large enough infantry force hasn't been able to cross and be well equipped to be able to push far enough into the Oleski Sands area or down towards Podi, right down here, where bridgeheads could be created over the Dnipro where APCs and tanks could be brought in easily. So with that, I hope that does address that well, and I thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, because that's why we think it's going a little slow down there in the Dnipro area. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Cliff H, who puts in a 10 and says, in appreciation of the LSA chat, it's the finest chat you'll ever find. And the chat is always on that grind. Prime time, 99, on the grind all the time. He says, a chat without peer. Now it's time for a beer. And he says, the chat will blow your mind.
And it will. And thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. I have to admit, the Lee Spring Army's live chat is the finest out there. Have y'all ever found a better one? I haven't. And I got to thank y'all so much once again for helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like y'all who supported this channel, we wouldn't be able to make it possible. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we've got a 10 from Rad Doctor, who says, are you more impressed by innovations and advancements in warfare, or how little war and fighting has changed since World War I?
How little war and fighting has changed. I think I'm more amazed by that, because no matter how much technology we're throwing at this war right now, it seems like it's devolving back into what war was like over 100 years ago. And that is bizarre to see. And I feel like in the future, historians are going to look back at this period of time from about maybe the 1860s, because that was really the first time we saw trench warfare at the Battle of Petersburg in the U.S. Civil War, and all the way up till now is the era of trench warfare. And while we haven't seen trench warfare in every war, and World War II is certainly a major exception to that, being highly mobile and moving very quickly, it seems as though trenches have become a very obvious and just huge part of modern war. And I think that's what we're probably going to see down the line, is that people are going to talk about this era as the era of the trenches. The trenches never died in World War I. Moving on into World War II, they were still around, and we can see today that no matter how much technology we are innovating with, it will still devolve back to trench warfare, warfare in this era of history, which is just wild. But with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Butchie777, who puts in a 10 and says, my Japanese Akitas go crazy when I play the Morse code. They probably think the squirrels in the garden are plotting against them. And love the LSC and the BS-free news and the rabbit holes. Keep it going.
And thank you so much for the support and help this channel to keep on running. I love to hear that you have Akitas. That's really cool. And also, they probably do think that the squirrels are plotting to overthrow the government, but I don't know much about that. They're turning the freaking squirrels into FBI operatives. But nevertheless, thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because folks like you make this thing possible. And hey, keep it classy. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
And what do we got? The next one?
Yeah, I think we're on to the next one, aren't we?
Oh, okay. I thought you meant like a live chat. But anyways, moving on to our next super chat question. We have a donation from Notorious GRG, who's a longtime channel viewer, and he says, just cuz.
And thank you so much for the support, Notorious GRG. Just cuz. Your support may be just cuz, but it helps this channel to keep on running. A big thing to Matthew and me, and also probably to a lot of y'all as well, because this has become a nightly routine. And so with that, thank you so much once again for supporting this channel and helping us.
It's like a cult.
It really is a cult. It's the cult of Matt and the cult of Enforcer. The cult of Enforcer never existed though. Y'all are just Lee Spring Army if you're a big fan of the Enforcer, you're Lee Spring Army. But cult of Matt is another thing. But still,
you gotta be crazy enough to have your own cult. Enforcer, you're not crazy enough.
Man, I am be wildin' though. Y'all will see. Y'all will see. I do be wild.
You might get there.
But with that, I gotta thank you.
Give another year, you might get to that crazy point where you can have your own cult.
Man, if only I could. You know, maybe we'll work on that sometime. Maybe we'll have like a really weird, crazy cult. But anyways, with that, thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for you doing it for the hell of it, we wouldn't be able to be on air. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a 5 from CK Bold, who puts in the usual and says, take a live chat question. And we shall, CK Bold. And the live chat question is going to go to Old Warrior, who says, what consequences do you see for the attempt on Budanov's wife?
Yeah, I don't really know. Probably an investigation into the Ukrainian government. Maybe some reprisals against the FSB. I don't really know, because it really depends on who they think is the one who did it, and then we'll see what the reprisals look like from there. And we have no idea what the who the group was that even did that to Budanov's wife. But with that, I hope that does address that well, and I thank you so much for sponsoring that live chat, CK Bold, the #1, the usual. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And the next one goes to Ed, who puts in a 5 and says, LSA, Irish Ed from Pennsylvania here. And I have a confession to make. I'm Irish and my name is Ed, and I'm from Pennsylvania, but I've never been to Ireland or wore a kilt. LSA, yeah.
And I thank you so much for the support, Ed, and helping this channel to keep on running. Irish Ed from Pennsylvania. And that's okay. That's perfectly fine to be Irish Ed without having been to Ireland or wore a kilt. I will tell y'all, though, I have actually worn a kilt on a many occasion. Before I ran this stream, for a while, I was actually a bagpiper and would play at funerals. So I've had a little bit of an experience with things that revolve around death, more so than other people. But, you know, that's something that I will have to admit. I have worn a kilt. I have not been to Ireland personally myself. Have been to the British Islands, but we only went to England and Wales. We never ended up going to Scotland, Northern Ireland, or Ireland. Or as the Irish would call it, just Ireland. Car bombs.
Irish.
Come out, you blackened tons. Come out and fight me like a man. But anyways, thank you so much once again for support.
Man, they're really coming out these days. They're burning that whole damn city down over there.
I mean, they're getting a little heated, but we better avoid that one. But still, with that, thank you so much once again for support, Irish Ed, helping this channel to keep on running, and long live the Lee Spring Army. And with that, thank you so much once again, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one, it goes to Stefan, who puts in a 2. And Stefan, thank you very much for that support. And he says, call him out. And we always try to call him out whenever we can. And thank you very much, Stefan, for that support. And that was our last Super Chat of the Super Chat segment. So we're moving in to our live chat segment. And of course, up first, we have our Morse code decoders of the stream. And tonight, it was Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Bernew, Paul Schultz, Kevin J, Rumpelstiltskin, Toxic Bananas, and that was it. Those Toxic Bananas. And tonight's Morse code reads: we are going to see a victory for Ukraine in the future. Long live the LSA. Slav Ukraine. Slav Israel. Slava LSA.
And that's the sound of money, and y'all got it dead on the nail. That was the Morse code message of the night. I left that message because while I knew that we were going to be talking about, you know, everything that was going on over there and how the war is probably going to be dragging on, I still think it's going to end up in a victory. Just because we don't have the most amazing things to say and Ukraine isn't going to be doing a backflip, a somersault, and winning tomorrow, that doesn't mean that Ukraine isn't going to win. That means that it's just going to take more time. And I think that that's an important mindset to be in, because I feel like people need to be mentally geared for this long march ahead that we have in supporting Ukraine and eventually seeing them to victory. And so thank y'all for deciphering that Morse code message so I could spread that little word of wisdom right there that I think we should get out of everything we've heard tonight. But with that, thank you so much once again to all of y'all for deciphering the Morse code messages. And believe it or not, everyone, we have gone so overtime. It is massively overtime. It's nearly a 3-hour-long stream right now. And so we are going to answer 3 live chat questions, and then we're going to be rounding out the stream. And so with that, we are on to the first one.
And oh dear, we've gone so overtime. We have to speed it up a little bit faster now. But anyways, our first super chat, or our first live chat question goes to Anonymous, who says the Finnish border is totally closed, and will Putin really send a new conscript army to invade?
I don't think so. I think he'll probably leave Finland alone, and that will just be considered an insult to Russia, which is a great thing. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Kaltenberg, who says, have you heard that the new Russian-produced rockets and shells are short on propellant? It's true.
I've heard about that. I have. I don't know why my voice is cracking so much lately, y'all. I'm so sorry. But I have heard about that, and I have a feeling that that's probably going to significantly decrease the already heavily decreased accuracy of the Russian artillerists and help the Ukrainians to hopefully weather through the Russian artillery barrages a lot better, considering they'll probably be falling short drastically. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you for asking a good question, Kaltenberg. That was a good one. And with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who is the lucky last person who threw in the lucky last question of the night?
And the lucky last question, the lucky last viewer of the night is Marco Molina. Thank you very much, Marco, for the question. Would it be a good idea or feasible to put C4 plastic explosives on the drones?
I suppose that it could be a smart idea, kind of like how I suggested that we nuke a hurricane. Nuke the hurricane, blow it away, just hit it with a trident.
But to answer that question, yeah, I mean, you could. It would, it might work. I don't know how you would remotely detonate C4 because I think it requires some kind of a charge or something to detonate. But you could certainly do it if you
A
wanted
cell
to.
phone, a Nokia.
We better go all up Middle Eastern Alliance on these batches. We're about to be going absolutely crazy, believe me.
And that voice has gotten so much worse because I hardly even do it anymore. But still, I hope that does address that well. It's possible. It could work. If you do it the correct way and somehow find a way to make the C4 explode, you could certainly do it. But with that, it is the end of tonight's stream. I've got to thank all of y'all so much once again for watching. It's been an absolute honor and a pleasure to know that we've been able to run this stream for all of y'all and get out the news to y'all tonight. If y'all have enjoyed, make sure to hit the like button, make sure to subscribe, make sure to share this channel with your friends and tell them to subscribe as well, because it means a lot to us to have all of y'all here and have people join us as we continue to cover this news on the war. And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, Slava the Lee Spring Army, Slava America, and Slava Israel. And of course, the Lee Spring Army will never die. Good night, everyone, and take care.
And good night, LSA. Thank you all for another great stream. Slava Ukraine, Slava Israel, and good night. Get some rest, okay?
Yes.
The Lee Spring Army sends its regards.